Romanian Eagle. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, Battle of Tarnovo. 4. Bulgarian aerial reconnaissance was subsequently disrupted after Captain Irascu forced the crash of Bulgarian Lieutenant Bebkov's plane. After no Bulgarian planes took off, the Romanian flying team headed by Captain Irascu, with the advantage of machine guns on their own planes, not only observed the Bulgarian positions clearly, but also observed the hot air balloons on the positions. Swept away, now the Bulgarian army can only rely on sending soldiers to reconnaissance point at 5 am on the 3rd. The artillery support group, consisting of 350 heavy artillery regiments and 120 heavy artillery regiment, was ready. They were scattered over 6 artillery positions, which had been prepared, and platoons of trucks transporting ammunition, especially the 20 heavy artillery. The current Romanian big gun has 20 kilograms of shells, and a Dongfeng truck can only transport 2 such shells at a time. According to the rate of fire of 3 rounds per minute, a Dongfeng truck can be transported in 4 minutes. The 36 heavy artillery pieces of the 20 heavy artillery regiments alone require a one-time transport capacity of more than 600 trucks. Not to mention the ammunition consumption of the 350 artillery regiments, as well as the large number of 05 howitzers and 75 artillery guns. So modern warfare is all about money and national strength. When the hour hand reached 8:30, there was a rumbling sound of artillery behind the Romanian position. Nearly 200 heavy artillery with a caliber of more than 50 caliber shot violently at the soldiers of the Bulgarian First Army stationed in the position on the Tseruix Mountains. Fire. A large number of positions built on the Tseruix Mountains were destroyed by heavy artillery. Bulgarian soldiers hiding in the trenches were hit by heavy artillery from time to time. Without even a chance to scream, they turned into a pool of blood and penetrated into the soil. Especially the shells of the 20 caliber cannon weighing 20 kilograms. Even if they are not hit, as long as they are within 10 meters, they will be shocked to death. Therefore, in the positions of the Bulgarian First Army, you often see rows of soldiers in the trenches, silently lying motionless in the trenches. They had no scars all over their bodies, as if they had fallen asleep in the trenches, and experienced veterans knew that they were killed by shock. Faced with such a scene, I can only pray to God that the cannonballs don't fall into my trench. As for leaving the trenches and retreating to the rear, several unbearable recruits have already made a good demonstration. They all turned into dust under the attack of heavy artillery and stayed on the Tseruix mountain point during the 3-hour heavy artillery bombardment. The First Army, who had felt the treatment of the artillery on the Western Front of World War I in advance, suffered heavy casualties. At least 5,000 people were lost, but the greater loss was that most of the fortifications on the position were destroyed, especially the layout. The fire points were almost destroyed. There is no green at all on the Tseruix mountain, where they are stationed now. There are huge craters everywhere, which look like the surface of the moon, and the whole position is filled with the choking smell of gunpowder smoke. Lieutenant General Kudinchev, the commander of the Bulgarian First Army, who was defending the position, just let his soldiers bear the blow of the artillery alone, and did not order the artillery to counterattack. On the one hand, there are few Bulgarian large caliber artillery, coupled with insufficient range, and Romanian planes are hovering over their positions like annoying flies this morning. So he decided to save the precious artillery for a critical moment, and only sacrifice the soldiers in a hidden observation post in the rear. Edel took the Chief of Staff, General Courtois, the Secretary of the Army, and the Deputy Chief of Staff, Major General Prossy, to observe the effect of the shelling point. After watching the shelling, Edel said with emotion, "This is the power of heavy artillery bombardment. Yes, Your Highness, but not many countries can use such an attack effect." The Chief of Staff, General Courtois, also spoke with emotion. This 3-hour shelling knocked out more than 3,000 Romanian shells. Of course it will be spectacular, but we can't afford to use it many times. Deputy Chief of Staff Major General Prosy will speak of such an attack from an economic point of view, and Romania will not be able to use it many times in the face of Major General Prosy's truth. Edel couldn't refute, and had to change the subject. Let's keep watching. After the heavy artillery bombardment, it was the 5th Division of the 2nd Army who launched the attack this time. Crown Prince Edel and the others saw in the telescope that the 1st Division of the 5th Division took advantage of the fact that the heavy artillery had just subsided. Halfway through their run, Bulgarian artillery fire fell on their heads. The soldiers of these 5 divisions completely ignored the shells that were about to fall on their heads and continued to bend down and rush towards the position. After the defenders' artillery opened fire, the Romanian Army's 05 howitzer relied on the advantage of its own hand length and launched a counter-attack on the discovered Bulgarian artillery positions. Sure enough, these Bulgarian artillerymen no longer had time to take care of the Romanian soldiers, and they were all driven to move positions by the Romanian artillery. When they entered the first line position at a distance of 500 meters, the soldiers of the 5th Division lay on the ground and began to crawl forward. This made Lieutenant General Kudinchev, the commander of the Bulgarian 1st Army, frown in the observation post behind the defensive position. Seeing the wrinkles on his partner Lieutenant General Kudinchev's face that could trap mosquitoes, the Chief of Staff, Major General Kazdev, also said with an ugly face, "Now we are in trouble." Hearing his partner's words, Lieutenant General Kudinchev, who knew what his partner was thinking, said without raising his head, "Hopefully what we expected was an illusion." The soldiers on both sides fighting fiercely around the front line had no time to consider the thoughts of the upper level commanders. Now it is the key for them to kill each other and save themselves. A Bulgarian soldier aimed his rifle at a Romanian soldier, only to hear a pop, and the Romanian soldier he aimed at fell down. Before he was in a hurry to be happy, he felt that his eyes were darkened and he couldn't wake up again, and a gun hole appeared on his forehead. None of the soldiers around him gave him a second look. All of them raised their weapons and shot at the attacking Romanian soldiers. The two sides fought fiercely in front of the position, and the artillery of both sides also joined in. However, Romania gained a huge advantage with a large number of artillery, and a large number of Bulgarian machine guns and small artillery were destroyed on the position. Seeing this, Lieutenant General Kudinchev at the rear of the position said to a staff officer beside him, "Tell Major General Serafov to stop using machine guns and small artillery." When the staff officer went to call Major General Serafov to inform Lieutenant General Kudinchev of his decision, the attacking Romanian soldiers began to retreat. After the gunfire had completely ceased, Chief of Staff Major General Kazdaev spoke to Lieutenant General Kudinchev with the list of losses. "We lost a lot of technical equipment. 34 machine guns were destroyed, and 27, 57 and 75 guns were destroyed. The casualties of the soldiers in this counterfire were not large, but we won't have to fight a few more times." Hearing the words of his Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Kudinchev frowned even deeper. Behind the Romanian position, the commander of the 5th Division of the attack was being praised by Edel. "General Ankada, you fought well this time. If you come a few more times, the Bulgarians will fall in one battle." Major General Ankada said in a group of generals, in the face of the Crown Prince's praise, "We just caught the Bulgarians by surprise this time, and we shouldn't have such luck next time." Hearing the words of Major General Ankada, the Minister of War, General Courtois, said it with disapproval. "Then you will turn the temptation into an attack and see if these Bulgarians still have their money." Edel nodded when he heard the words of Admiral Courtois, indicating that he agreed. Now the Romanian army has to show an unreasonable momentum to overwhelm the Bulgarian. You can't be preoccupied with the gains and losses. So the words of the Minister of War made him very agree with him. In the end, it was Crown Prince Edel who said it definitively. "Just do as the Admiral said. I also want to see how long the Bulgarian army can endure." Chapter 152 Battle of Tarnovo 5. In the days that followed, the offensive of the Romanian army made the Bulgarians miserable. Every Romanian tentative attack would turn into a real storm if the position did not use machine guns and artillery, and that Seruic's position was forced to use suppressive fire and was destroyed by its artillery. The 1st Army, which was now defending the position on Mount Seruix, had been replenished 3 times with weapons, equipment and manpower, and was now exhausted by the actions of the attacking Romanian army. Now Lieutenant General Kudinchev, the commander of the First Army, felt a lot of pressure, and he had to ask Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of War, for help. Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of the Army who received the telegram asking for help from Lieutenant General Kudinchev, looked at the telegram in his hand, and went back and forth in the office, thinking about how to deal with such a situation. But in the end, he still has no good way. Romania is better than them in all aspects, and he has nothing to do. At this time, King Ferdinand I pushed open the door of his office with a blank expression. Lieutenant General Savov, I heard that Lieutenant General Kudinchev of the First Army asked you for help. What are you going to do? It is quite rare for Ferdinand I to ask such an unceremonious question, and he was almost asked to come up with a solution immediately. Lieutenant General Savov has no good way to do this. He can only talk about it. Your Majesty, I'm now thinking about the countermeasures. Lieutenant General Savov's answer obviously could not satisfy Ferdinand I, and he asked unceremoniously, then what are your measures? Lieutenant General Savov heard the king suppressed emotions, and tried to explain. Your Majesty, our army is indeed fighting very hard now, but because Romanian artillery far exceeds us, I think we can find a way on the supply line. After hearing Lieutenant General Savov's explanation, Ferdinand I softened his expression, and continued to ask, can you beat them? Facing the king's question, Lieutenant General Savov answered truthfully, no, you can only let them retreat a certain distance, and they will attack. After connecting to the supply again. This is not possible at all. After Ferdinand I rejected the plan first, he whispered a shocking news to him. The army in East Thrace is reporting that the Ottoman army is starting to build up. We must find a way to defeat the Romanians as soon as possible, or the Ottoman army will attack. Lieutenant General Savov, who heard this amazing news, was stunned. If the Ottoman army fought again, God would not be able to defeat the siege from all sides. No wonder King Ferdinand I couldn't sit still today. Lieutenant General Savov, who heard the news, was also anxious. In a state of anxiety, Lieutenant General Savov made a decision that he would regret for life. Your Majesty, there is only one way we want to defeat the Romanians in a short time. Hearing that his Minister of War had a solution, Ferdinand I asked eagerly, what is the way to beat the Romanians in a short period of time? That is to prepare for a raid at night. Hearing the words of Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of War, Ferdinand I fell into contemplation. Now the battle is only halfway through, but everyone can see the huge disadvantage of the Bulgarian army. As a monarch who knew the army very well, Ferdinand I also knew that there was little hope for his army to win in a frontal battle. Then only think of other ways, and now night surprise attack is a good choice in front of him. Of course, he also knew the consequences of a failed surprise attack, but the temptation of success was too great for Ferdinand I to refuse this temptation. In the end he decided to take a gamble, and after he figured it out, he told his war minister Lieutenant General Savov, you come up with a plan first. As Lieutenant General Savov, who has been with the king for many years, knows that the king is moved, he is not happy because of Ferdinand I's agreement, and still speaks calmly. Your Majesty, I need 2 days to prepare. Ferdinand I, who received the answer from the Minister of War, knew that this was the plan with the shortest preparation time. It is also said generously, it's okay, I can wait. After speaking, Ferdinand I left the office of Lieutenant General Savov, Minister of War. Seeing the departing king, Lieutenant General Savov secretly grieved that the current situation had pushed Bulgaria into a corner, and he could only fight hard. For the next 2 days, Lieutenant General Savov paid no attention to the situation at that Seruix mountain position, and just told Lieutenant General Kudinchev to hold the position. Therefore, the offensive of the Romanian army in the past 2 days can be found. The defending Bulgarian army completely disregarded its own losses and desperately resisted their attack. This situation was quickly reported to the rear headquarters, but the top leaders of the headquarters did not know the reason. They just sent planes to investigate, and the Bulgarian army showed no sign of retreating, which made them puzzled. After 2 days of preparation, on the morning of the 3rd day, Lieutenant General Savov was in the presence of King Ferdinand I, the commander of the 4th Army, General Positive. and the commander of the 4th Division, General Vidic point among them. The 4th Army is composed of the 9th Division drawn from the 2nd Army, the 6th Division drawn from the 3rd Army, and the newly formed 15th Division. The largest is only 75 field guns, and 127 light and heavy machine guns, which are not bad in the Bulgarian army. The spearhead of this night attack was still the 4th Division, because they had the most experience in large-scale night raids, so they were selected by Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of War, as the key to this mission point for this night attack. I intend to open a breach in Romania's left flank line, first by the 4th Division, and then by the 4th Army to follow. The first objective of this attack is to break down the Romanian army's chaos. Destroying the enemy, if it can't be done, is heavy artillery. The time for this night attack starts at 2 AM tomorrow. Lieutenant General Savov continued to ask questions after he finished speaking about the goal. Do you have any problems? After hearing the question from the Minister of War, Major General Vidic, the commander of the 4th Division, expressed his difficulties. Our 4th Division is currently lacking firepower support, and is at times so tight. After hearing the words of Major General Vidic, Lieutenant General Savov told him on the spot, "The firepower problem, I will send other troops to support you. We can't do anything about the time constraints. The 1st Army is about to be unable to bear it. Apart from you, we only have 2 newly formed divisions, and they can't stand up to Romania's attack." After hearing the words of Lieutenant General Savov, Major General Vidic did not continue to speak, as he acquiesced to the proposal of the Minister of War. After seeing that there were no comments, Lieutenant General Savov spoke to them. "You are ready to go?" Looking at the 2 generals leaving, Ferdinand I walked in front of him and asked with concern, "How sure are you?" Lieutenant General Savov, seeing that no one else was present, whispered his reasoning to the king. Lesson to layers of grasp. After hearing the words of his war minister, Ferdinand I patted him on the shoulder and left without saying a word. After the departure of the 2 generals, both the 4th Army and the 4th Division began to prepare for the night attack, and they were busy preparing weapons and ammunition and the battle plan distributed to the troops below. It was busy until 9 PM, and then the troops rested for the night attack at 2:00 am. PS There is a chapter to make up for yesterday's evening. One chapter can't be finished, it can only be divided into 2 chapters. Chapter 153 The Battle of Tarnovo. End. It was a good night and there was no moonlight at night, which greatly inspired the generals who were preparing for the night attack. At 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, the soldiers were called to eat, and then they started to move towards the Romanian right-wing position, intending to give them a hard time to relieve themselves. The resentment of being shelled these days on the Romanian right-wing position late at night, the officers and soldiers of the defending 12th Division carefully observed the situation in front of them. The fact that Bulgaria loves sneak attacks has long been known to them through the propaganda of the 2 countries. Therefore, all positions are strictly guarded these days. The flares were also fired every few minutes, which made the night attack of the 4th Division even more difficult. But this time they are going to go, no matter how difficult it is, because Bulgaria will not be able to withstand the frontal battlefield. In the front line of the 12th Division, a captain was holding a telescope to observe the movement in Bulgaria under the light of the flare. At this time, he noticed that a field of grass moved at a distance of 500 meters. When he planned to observe again, the flare has gone out. Fire the flares on the right side again. The dutiful captain had the artillery fire another flare. Bang, another flare illuminated everything in front of the position, which exposed the unexpected Bulgarian soldiers. Seeing the dense crowd of Bulgarian soldiers in front of the position, the captain roared without hesitation, "Night attack!" Then he took out a flare gun and shot the red flare, representing the night attack, into the sky. Seeing that their intentions were exposed, the officers and soldiers of the Bulgarian 4th Division no longer concealed it, and stood up and quickly rushed towards the Romanian position, intending to rush into the trenches, when the Romanian army did not respond. However, their intentions were clearly seen through, and the numerous machine guns on the Romanian positions made their ideas unrealistic. For a time, the Bulgarian soldiers were blocked from moving at a distance of 300 meters in front of the position. This made the division commander Major General Vidic very anxious, and he ordered the staff behind him Let the artillery strike knock out the fire on the Romanian positions where Major General Vidic ordered the artillery. News of the Bulgarian night attack also reached the Romanian headquarters. When Edel heard the news of the Bulgarian night attack, he ran into the command hall without even bothering to wear his military uniform. Seeing that the Crown Prince came out wearing only a shirt, it was also the just arrived Chief of Staff, General Courtois, and the Deputy Chief of Staff, Major General Ploiesti, who came up to greet him. Edel asked, before they could speak, "How is the front line now?" Hearing Edel's question, Major General Ploiesti, who had read the telegram, said it. "The position can still be held now. After all, we are not Serbs, so is our plan ready to use?" Hearing the Crown Prince's question, Major General Ploiesti looked at Admiral Courtois and said, "It can be done." After hearing Major General Ploiesti's words, Edel looked at Admiral Courtois, and when the Crown Prince asked questions, Admiral Courtois also said in agreement, "Since there is a rare chance of a Bulgarian attack, why don't we do it for them?" After seeing that the two chiefs of staff were in favor, Crown Prince Edel gave a rare order to the staff. Prepare to implement Plan V for a time. Everyone in the command room started to get busy. In fact, the V plan was prepared in response to the Bulgarian night attack. In the plan, after the first line position was attacked, it would gradually give up its resistance within an hour to make way for the gaps on the two wings, and 2 divisions would intercept 3 kilometers behind. At the same time, 2 divisions attacked from both sides. The division that finally opened the gap would close the gap with the reinforcement of the 2 divisions and encircle the Bulgarian troops that had advanced into the position on a 3-kilometer piece of land. Now with the raids of the Bulgarian army, this program has also been implemented by the Romanian military. At this time, the 2nd, 3rd and 2nd divisions of the 3rd Army began to move. They were to defend a position 3 kilometers behind the 12th Division to stop the Bulgarian assault. The 1st and 4th divisions of the 1st Army were to be deployed on the flanks, ready to flank the Bulgarian army. The 8th Division will move to the front line and prepare to close the doors of the 12th Division, while the Cavalry Division is also making preparations. They use battalions as units and plan to stop the slipping fish after dawn. An invisible big net prepared for the Bulgarian army for a time has begun to be prepared, and the Bulgarian army is still fighting hard to break through the position of the 12th Division. Call the artillery to fire. The pioneer of the Bulgarian assault, Major General Vidic, the 4th Division commander, shouted to the Chief of Staff beside him with red eyes. It turned out that the Romanian machine guns had already killed many soldiers of the charging 4th Division, even though he had previously ordered the firing. But the machine guns in the Romanian positions were too cunning, and they usually shot a shuttle to another location. The previous artillery attacks were often a step too late, and they could not accurately hit the supporting firepower on the position, causing the charging 4th Division to suffer a large number of casualties, causing the 4th Division to be unable to attack. Seeing such a scene, Major General Vidic, as the commander of the 4th Division, was also very anxious. He could only order the artillery to continue to bombard the machine gun points on the Romanian positions, hoping to reduce the pressure on the frontline troops. After almost an hour of fighting, the firepower on the position gradually decreased, and the Bulgarian soldiers could no longer stop the attack, and the soldiers entered the position. After seeing that his subordinates finally broke through the Romanian position, Major General Vidic's face finally turned cloudy like the weather. He said to the Chief of Staff beside him with a smile, "Despite the casualties, it's worth ordering everything." The Chief of Staff also put down his worries and asked, "Then I'll send a telegram to the 4th Army and ask them to follow up immediately." Major General Vidic didn't look back, still raised the telescope in his hand and told him, "Go." The news that the 4th Division had broken through the Romanian first line of defense was quickly transmitted back to the general headquarters of the Bulgarian army, so that King Ferdinand I and Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of War, who had been waiting for the news, were relieved of their burdens. None of them could sleep tonight, all awaiting the raid that would determine the fate of Bulgaria. Breaking the Romanian first line of defense this time is a good start. The 4th Division, which was the vanguard, was in a breached position, and after the arrival of reinforcement from the 4th Army, it continued to advance towards the Romanian rear. The 4th Army also sent 2 divisions to follow the 4th Division to continue the advance, but they encountered resistance from the Romanian 2nd and 3rd Divisions 3 kilometers away. In the face of the ferocious fire on the Romanian positions, the Bulgarian army, which combined the strength of 3 divisions, completely made up for it. This made Major General Vidic, the commander of the 4th Division, secretly anxious. In their plan, if they could not break through the Romanian defenses before dawn, then their night attack would be a failure. The Romanian defense doesn't look good this time, and we are running out of time. The Chief of Staff told Major General Vidic that he was worried. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. If the positions in front of them could not be breached before 6 o'clock, then their 3 divisions would be exposed to Romanian artillery. After Major General Vidic heard the words of the Chief of Staff, he said it, as if to cheer himself up. We haven't captured this position at 5:30, so we'll retreat. Hearing his partner's unwillingness, the Chief of Staff only agreed. Okay, this time allows us to attack twice, if not, retreat. Then the Bulgarian army launched a bigger offensive. A large number of soldiers bravely attacked the Romanian positions in front of them, completely ignoring that their comrades were hit by bullets and blown up by artillery. These Bulgarians fought very bravely. Lieutenant General Salamic, the commander of the 3rd Army, who observed the situation behind the position, commented on the Bulgarian troops. It's a pity that they can't resist bullets, no matter how brave they are, and our Romanian army will do better than them when they attack. Lieutenant General Ploiesti, the commander of the 1st Army, was obviously not optimistic about these Bulgarian troops. Seeing the 2 army bosses in front of them, the other generals behind them didn't dare to interrupt. However, the soldiers on both sides on the battlefield will not care about other things, and now they have to kill the enemy soldiers on the opposite side to protect themselves. However, in the confrontation between the 2 soldiers, the Romanian army, with its superior technology and the defense of the trenches and the help of machine guns, pressed the Bulgarian soldiers. When the Bulgarian army attacked to 5 o'clock, the 12th and 8th divisions, which had retreated to both sides of the front line, began to charge. The 15th division of the 4th Army, which was guarding the gap, faced the elite soldiers who had been training for several years in Romania. The new recruits were no match for these training for more than a month, and they were driven out of the trenches one after another. The 3 Bulgarian divisions that were attacking were panicked as soon as they got the news, and they were about to withdraw their troops. The 1st and 4th divisions, who were waiting on the flanks, also rushed over from the 2 flanks to entangle them. The 2nd and 3rd divisions also rushed out of position. Faced with the siege of the 4 Romanian divisions, the Bulgarian army of the 3 divisions was completely unable to retreat, and could only watch as their back path was closed by the 8th and 12th divisions of the Romanian army. Seeing that the 3 divisions of the Bulgarian army were encircled in this 9 square kilometers of land, in order to avoid too many casualties, the Romanian army that entangled them also retreated. This made Major General Vidic and the others uncomfortable. They knew that after the arrival of the Romanian army during the day, they would bombard them with heavy artillery. Under the attack of the large number of artillery pieces of the Romanian army, whether the young man they brought survived, depends on God will. For this reason, the 3 divisions tried to take advantage of the 8th and 12th divisions, which were defending the first line positions, to launch a final attack when their footing was unstable. The repulsed Bulgarian 15th Division also tried to attack the position, in order to meet the 3 encircled divisions, distracting the defenders. The 8th and 12th Divisions, which were defending the first line positions, endured the most violent attack in this battle. Machine gun suppression. A Romanian officer on the position loudly gave an order to a Maxim machine gun group under his command. The main shooter is now completely ignoring the machine gun's operation manual, holding the trigger and holding down the trigger, frantically shooting the Bulgarian soldiers rushing towards the position. The offensive of the Bulgarian army in front of this position was suppressed under the fierce attack of the deadly main marksman. Just when the officer breathed a sigh of relief, disturbed by the noise, an imperceptible gunshot sounded, and the life-threatening main shooter fell to the ground. After seeing the main shooter fall to the ground, the sub-shooter hurriedly stepped forward to fill his position. At this time, another shot was fired, and the sub-shooter also fell to the ground. This time, the officer used the flame of the muzzle to see the position of the cold gun. It was under the corpses of 3 Bulgarian soldiers, and a rifle quietly stuck out. He stepped forward and took the machine gun and shot violently at the 3 corpses he was looking at. In front of the powerful firepower of Markin's heavy machine gun, this time it really became a corpse point. The Bulgarian offensive continued until dawn, but the first line positions guarded by the 2 Romanian divisions remained firmly in their hands. In the face of this situation, the surrounded Bulgarian army was completely desperate. At this time, the violent artillery fire of Romania came as scheduled. In the face of an unavoidable scene, a large number of Bulgarians were killed in action. Many people could not stand such an attack. The surrounded Romanian army surrendered. In the end, only 23,000 troops of the 110,000 troops who raided the Romanian positions eventually retreated. Among them, 48,000 died and 39,000 were captured. Among the 39,000 captured, 11,000 were wounded. After waiting for news from the headquarters that Crown Prince Edel saw the results of this battle, he knew that Bulgaria's peace was at hand. He plans to reward the meritorious servants with the awards after the battle, and those who should be promoted will be promoted. Different from the laughter of the Romanian army, when King Ferdinand I of Bulgaria and Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of War, who were waiting for the news, got the news. Their faces were paper-like and their eyes revealed deep despair. Ferdinand I grabbed the Minister of War by the shoulder and asked in a desperate tone, "What shall we do now? What shall we do?" Lieutenant General Savov, who was startled by Ferdinand I, felt that the king was holding on to his shoulders. After he calmed down, his brain started to think quickly. "Your Majesty, we must now withdraw our troops and abandon Tarnovo." After hearing the advice of Lieutenant General Savov, Ferdinand I said with a blank eye, "Yes, now this is a last force, and we can't waste it here. We have to hurry back." Ferdinand I couldn't help but shed tears as he spoke. He was weeping for the shattering of the dream of Great Bulgaria, and also for the heavy casualties in Bulgaria this time. Seeing that King Ferdinand I was out of control, Lieutenant General Savov was equally uncomfortable, but he still had to organize the evacuation of the army. But it was estimated that at least 2 divisions would be needed to break it down, and this breakup is estimated to be more fortunate than the First Army, which is now sticking to the position on the Tseruix Mountains, will not be able to withdraw, and now Lieutenant General Kudinchev can only make sacrifices to this end. He personally called Lieutenant General Kudinchev, but they had to stick to it for 3 days no matter what. Lieutenant General Kudinchev guaranteed by his own reputation that he would delay the Romanians for 3 days and give them a retreat point. After thinking about all this, Lieutenant General Savov began to prepare to evacuate. He first asked the 14th Division to step up to reinforce the 1st Army and then withdraw the 3rd Division. The now retreating raiding soldiers began to retreat to the rear after the reorganization of the 7th Division. After eliminating the 3 Bulgarian divisions attacking at night, the Romanian army began to attack the Bulgarian 1st Army, which was defending the position on Tseruix Mountain. This time they will face the 3 Romanian armies taking turns to attack, but the Bulgarian 1st Army, which was defending the position on the Tseruix Mountains, stubbornly defended after getting the firepower of other troops who were evacuated lightly. It was not until 3 days later that they were forced to retreat. However, only 37,000 people were left when the 1st Army defending the position was evacuated. Together with the troops replenished to the 1st Army, they left 60,000 casualties on the position, which was considered a heavy casualty, and the heavy firepower was completely discarded by them. Because of the evacuation. On July 21, Romania occupied Tarnovo. This time around the city of Tarnovo, Bulgaria invested 247,000 troops, Romania invested 230,000 troops, and the two sides were close to 500,000 troops. It ended with Bulgarian casualties taking 113,000 prisoners and Romanian 28,000 lost. With the battle over, Bulgaria's war potential was exhausted, and other countries began to prepare for the diplomatic negotiations that followed. PS is finally over, and then we will enter the familiar plot of Mantua. You should not miss it. Chapter 154, The Responses of Various Countries. After the Battle of Tarnovo, the Bulgarian army retreated directly to Norwich, taking advantage of the 3 days of desperate resistance of the 1st Army. going to rest a little, and continue back to Jabranica, which is the only way to Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria. While Bulgaria was preparing, news of the Romanian army's overwhelming victory at the Battle of Tarnovo spread around the world. In fact, when the Bulgarian army retreated, the outside world already knew the news, but it was not reported how much Bulgaria lost. In fact, this is also what Crown Prince Edel intends to do, just to make the armies of the two countries have scruples, so that Romania can occupy more areas and gain greater benefits. This is also the best reward for helping the Romanian army between the two armies of CE. It was not until it could no longer hide it that Romania made public the results of the battle, and at the same time allowed observation groups from various countries to visit the prisoner of war camp. Of course, the two countries are dissatisfied with Romania in their hearts, but in view of their strong combat effectiveness, they can only swallow their dissatisfaction. Who let them secretly make a black hand before, and now they can only hope to break the Bulgarian position. Come to give yourself extra points and be in a favorable position in the post-war battle for interests. Observers from various countries have reported Romania's performance to the country. It must be the first battle after Romania's army was reorganized. Before, it was only superficial understanding. Now the performance on the battlefield is the most critical. After observing the battle, they all raised the rating of the Romanian army in their hearts. Among them, Colonel Hans von Sickert, head of the German observation group, wrote in a report to the General Staff, "The Romanian army has performed very well in this war. Their command at the battalion and company level is no less than that of the Imperial Army. However, there is a small gap between the Imperial Army and the Imperial Army above the regiment level, mainly due to some gaps in cooperation. And it is still a lot worse than the Imperial Army in terms of infantry-artillery coordination. But I believe that they will be no different from the Imperial Army after training like this for a few years." Now the 3rd Romanian Division and the 2 Guard divisions have reached our level point. In this report, Colonel Sickert compares the Romanian army with the Germans, placing the Romanian army high. He also had the same opinion as Colonel Yarovsky, the head of the Russian observation mission, and General von Kessman, the representative of the Austrian-Hungarian observation mission. Among them, Colonel Yarovsky believed that Romania's current army is not much different from Russia's, and the 3 most elite divisions can be compared with the Guards. The representative of Austria-Hungary, General von Kessman, believed that the Romanian army could compete with the army of the Germans in Austria-Hungary. The remaining representatives of Britain, France, and Italy also believed that the Romanian army had broken away from the second-rate European army and could completely compete with the armies of the foreign powers after countries sent the performance of the Romanian army back to their home countries. Germany, Austria, and Russia paid the most attention to it, because no matter which side Romania goes to, it can strengthen the opponent's army of hundreds of thousands. It will also increase the population of the other party by 9 million. You must know that except for Russia, the population of other countries is only 30 to 40 million. Moreover, Romania produces grain and oil, among which grain is the foundation of a country. In the post-World War I coup d'etat caused by the lack of clothing and food, it is not difficult to understand why grain is so important. In the face of Europe's second largest grain producing country, it is no problem to win over all parties. After Germany received Colonel Sickert's telegram, Kaiser Wilhelm II, Prime Minister Herwig and Chief of General Staff Admiral Moltke discussed the current situation in the Balkans together. General Mooch, what do you think of the current Balkan War? William II is now more concerned about the situation in the Balkans. On the one hand, it involves Romania and the Ottomans, which have good interests in Germany, and Bulgaria, which is gradually leaning towards him. He had been informed that the Ottomans were preparing to declare war on Bulgaria, thanks to the large group of German advisors in the Ottoman army, so he knew exactly where the Ottomans were. On the other hand, because Austria-Hungary, its most important ally, has huge local interests, this is very likely to conflict with Russia, and Germany must pay close attention to local trends. Your Majesty, I don't think Bulgaria has any chance of winning now. After the Battle of Tarnovo, there were only 330,000 Bulgarian troops left, and the elite troops suffered heavy losses in this battle. Now they need to face the Balkans, the millions of troops of the 5 countries. This is an impossible task, and now they need to make peace. To reduce their losses, General Moltke said militarily that Bulgaria's defeat was inevitable. After hearing this, William II nodded in approval of General Much's words. Now that the strength is 1-3, everyone can see that Bulgaria has failed. The key now is whether to stop the war. Because Germany was in an embarrassing position in this war. On the one hand, it was Bulgaria, which was moving closer to itself, and on the other hand, it was its traditional friendly country, which really embarrassed them. In the face of the difficult problem between old and new friendly countries, Wilhelm II asked Prime Minister Helvig, "Your Excellency Helvig, what do you think we should say about this?" Chancellor Helvig said, after thinking about the Kaiser. "Your Majesty, I think it's best to let Austria-Hungary speak first, and we stand behind them. After all, we can't make any comments about who we support in our position. Let them discuss it for a while, and then we will wait and see." In the face of Prime Minister Helvig's opinion, General Much was not too happy. "Your Excellency Prime Minister, according to your suggestion, it is very easy for us to lose understanding from both parties and make things worse." In the face of General Much's questioning, Prime Minister Helvig was not angry and asked instead, "Then what should we do according to General Much's suggestion?" In the face of Prime Minister Helvig asking about the opinion of the Chief of the General Staff, Much, the Kaiser showed great interest, and it seems that he is also more interested. "Your Majesty." Prime Minister General Malki first nodded to them, and then directly stated his suggestion. "I think we should choose the winning side, which will reduce the pressure on us in the region. Austria-Hungary will support Bulgaria anyway. We can choose to support Romania and Ottoman, so that we can account for all three countries." Hearing the words of General Much, the Kaiser and the Prime Minister fell into thinking, which is indeed much better than the Prime Minister's previous suggestion. Wilhelm II said to Prime Minister Helvig after pondering, "Let's do it first according to General Malki's method. If there is a change, we will adjust it." In the face of William II's words, Prime Minister Helvig saluted and said, "Okay, Your Majesty, I will arrange for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to do this." When the Kaiser was discussing his embarrassing position in this war, the Russian Tsar Nicholas II was even more embarrassed than him. After he got the news, he also called ministers to discuss Russia's attitude. Nicholas II asked his ministers, "Should we mediate this war now?" In the face of the Tsar's question, the military representative, Duke Nicholas Jr., took the lead. "Your Majesty, I think Romania is the most profitable now. Serbia will not be too satisfied with mediation now." After hearing the words of his uncle, Duke Nicholas the Younger, Nicholas II looked at Prime Minister Kakavtsov. Obviously he needed the Prime Minister's opinion. "Your Majesty, it doesn't matter whether we mediate or not, because Bulgaria is no longer able to withstand the attacks of the Balkan countries. As long as Ferdinand I is not stupid, he will ask for peace within a week at most." Prime Minister Kakavtsov suggested to Nicholas II. He knew why the Tsar would raise such a question, but on the Bulgarian side they can only give up now. After all, Serbia is much more important to them. Hearing that neither the Prime Minister nor the military wants to mediate, Nicholas II is not forced to reluctantly. After all, he also needs to respect the unanimous opinion of the ministers. Only the Austro-Hungarian Empire was left to intervene in this war. However, in the face of the Second Balkan War, the five countries have as many as 1 million troops, and they can only stand on the sidelines. After all, he couldn't be desperate for Bulgaria, and there was Russia watching him beside him. Now the situation in Bulgaria has reached the most dangerous moment. The surrounding neighboring countries have declared war, or are preparing to declare war on it. Now it is time for the Bulgarian government to figure out its own way out. PS. In the past 2 days, I was in a bad state, and I was unlucky. The computer that was preparing to code was broken until 7:30 in the evening. The 2 episodes that had been promised were delayed until the early morning of the next day to finish writing a chapter. Now Mantou is a little cold, running nose and sweating. After finishing this chapter, I will go to bed and make up 3 chapters tomorrow. .txt download address, phone reading. For the convenience of reading next time, you can add bookmark at the top to record this reading record, and you can see it when you open the bookshelf next time. Please recommend this book to your friends. Lineland, thank you for your support! Exclamation mark. Chapter 155 Bulgaria summons. After retreating to Norwich for 3 days, Bulgaria continued to move to Jabranica, where they would rely on the terrain of the Balkan Mountains to drag the Romanian army. At this time, a piece of news that was shocking for Bulgaria came, and the Ottomans declared war on Bulgaria. The commander of the Ottoman army this time was Enver from the Al-Shabaab triumvirate, who was then the chief of the Ottoman General Staff. He had already done so with the help of General Otto Lehmann von Sanders, head of the German advisory group. Okay, the military plan for the war, however, because Bulgaria has shown amazing strength before, the plan can only be a plan for the time being. However, after seeing the heavy losses of Bulgaria after the Battle of Tarnovo, Enver couldn't bear it any longer. He planned to retake the old capital of Adrianople and keep the Bulgarians away from Istanbul. So on July 23rd, Ottoman officially declared war on Relegation Lee. Then 300,000 Ottoman troops set out from Istanbul and Sharkoy respectively, and successively occupied Korlu and Tekurdag in eastern Thrace. Bulgaria has less than 20,000 troops stationed locally, and facing the Ottoman army of up to 300,000 troops can only retreat all the way to Adriatic Fort. They plan to rely on this fortress city that was broken by themselves for a while, and of course they will not forget to ask Sofia for help. But now Bulgaria is being attacked everywhere, and there is absolutely no possibility of deploying troops to support them. Now facing this situation of siege from all sides, the idea of seeking reconciliation here is an image left in the minds of Bulgarian high-level officials on the second day, when the Bulgarian army retreated to Jabranica. Ferdinand I and Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of War, Prime Minister Jeshov and Foreign Minister Tirisloch, who had arrived from Sofia, were at his residence. Discuss this matter secretly. Ferdinand I was sitting in the main seat of the room, looking at Prime Minister Jeshov with silver hair on his left, Lieutenant General Savov, who was still looking ashes, on his right, sitting next to the Prime Minister, and looking down at the ground Tirisloch, Foreign Minister. A feeling of loss could not be expressed in his chest for a long time, but he still forced himself to ask the ministers he trusted most. What should we do now in this situation? Facing the question of Ferdinand I, Lieutenant General Savov, with a grey face, glanced at Prime Minister Jeshov, apparently hoping that the Prime Minister would come up with an answer that would not satisfy all Bulgarians. Foreign Minister Tirisloch, who bowed his head, also looked at the Prime Minister beside him, and it seemed that he also hoped that Prime Minister Jeshov would come to make this head point. Seeing that several people in the room were looking at him, Prime Minister Jeshov had to bite the bullet and say, "Your Majesty, we have no chance of winning in this war. We can only invite Germany and Austria-Hungary to mediate this war. At the same time, we request a truce from the participating countries." When he said the final armistice, he seemed to do his best, and after that, Prime Minister Jeshov slumped into his seat. Seeing the appearance of Prime Minister Jeshov, Ferdinand I could not continue to ask him anymore. He looked at Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of War. Lieutenant General Savov, who was being watched by him, was much more agile this time. Probably someone started. He sorted out his thoughts and started talking. I think the Prime Minister's opinion is advisable. We in the Bulgarian army now have only 330,000 people left, and we were short of ammunition and support weapons after the Battle of Tarnovo. Most of them were destroyed in this battle. Now that we are powerless to resist their invasion on all fronts, we can cut some losses by truce. After speaking his views, Lieutenant General Savov talked about the recent situation on various fronts, in order to enhance his persuasive power. Everyone knows the situation on our and Romanian fronts, so I won't introduce more. Now I will talk about the Greek front. They broke through the defense of the Second Army 3 days ago under the leadership of King Constantine. Now the troops had already approached the city of Thessaloniki, and the Second Army sent a telegram saying that, if they could not get reinforcement, they would not be able to withstand the Greek army of 50,000. Hearing the words of his Minister of War, all the Bulgarian decision makers here did not speak, and Lieutenant General Savov continued to talk about the war in Macedonia. Now, Serbia has also launched an attack on our defense line in the Macedonia area. Among them, the Serbian army, under the leadership of its commander Marshal Pudnik, has entered the Macedonia area again, and our local army can only be supported. The Third Army we have retreated to the Kochani area, and most of the Macedonia we occupy now has been recaptured by Serbia. There has not been much attack on the border between the country and Serbia. It is estimated that Serbia hopes to take most of Macedonia and is here to discuss with us a fait accompli point. After talking about the Serbian side, Lieutenant General Savov did not stop talking about the Ottoman side. If it is said that the Bulgarian army can still resist on other fronts, then in Eastern Thrace, the Ottoman army was like entering no man's land. Now our most dangerous area is Eastern Thrace. Our 20,000 troops there are completely unable to resist the Ottoman army of 300,000. Although they have slowed down the speed of the Ottoman advance by destroying road facilities, they have little effect. Now that the Ottoman army is approaching Lulaburgas, they are only 20 kilometers away from Adriatic Fort, and they will arrive there in a week at most, and it is absolutely impossible for us to hold it. In fact, Ferdinand I knew exactly what was going on all fronts in Bulgaria now. He asked Lieutenant General Savov to tell the purpose of these military intelligence, and he still hoped that someone would come forward and lead the Bulgarian delegation to negotiate with various countries. This time, his candidate is actually Prime Minister Jeshov. As a Prime Minister of a country, he has enough weight, and after signing the talks, he can also let him go out of office to ease the grievances of the Bulgarian people. Prime Minister Jeshov actually knew this, but now only he and King Ferdinand I can negotiate on behalf of Bulgaria. It is impossible for the king to participate in the negotiations, so he was already prepared before Sofia came. But no one wants to give up power like this, but now Bulgaria can't find a better candidate than him. Ferdinand I agreed with the Prime Minister's opinion under the explanation of Lieutenant General Savov. The Minister of War then do as the Prime Minister wishes. After saying this, Ferdinand I looked at Dirislach, the Foreign Minister, who had been a transparent person for a night. The Foreign Minister needs to trouble you with this matter. Foreign Minister Dirislach gave a shudder and immediately stood up and replied, I have no trouble at all for Bulgaria. Seeing the foreign minister's more clever appearance, Ferdinand I told him, we first issue a truce request to the countries participating in the war, and then let Austria-Hungary and Germany support our proposal, and persuade the countries to truce. Do you think it is feasible? Prime Minister Jeshov is ready to be laid off after negotiations, but he is still Prime Minister, he said after thinking about it. Your Majesty, except for the Ottoman Empire, I believe they will all accept this proposal. After hearing Prime Minister Jeshov's words, Foreign Minister Dirislach asked worriedly, so how do we deal with the Ottoman offensive? Lieutenant General Savov answered this question on behalf of the Bulgarian military. This is simple. As long as other countries agree to a truce, I can guarantee that the Ottoman army will not dare to attack alone. Then let's do it like this. Ferdinand I said firmly. Then after the secret meeting, Foreign Minister Dirislach sent out the news of Bulgaria's request for peace. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156 Armistice. After Bulgaria's request for an armistice was sent, it was immediately received by various governments, among them, Crown Prince Edel, who was acting with the Romanian army, also received the news immediately. In the face of Bulgaria's request for peace, he summoned the army minister of the army, General Courtois, the chief of the general staff, Lieutenant General Prishan, and the generals of other armies to discuss whether to accept Bulgaria in the city of Norwich, which had just been captured. Reconciliation point in the command headquarters in the city. Edel sat in the upper seat, watching the generals on both sides of him, who were surging with stars, start a fierce debate for Bulgaria's peace. I don't think the Bulgarian army has the strength to compete with us at all. Why should we accept their armistice agreement? Lieutenant General Andrew, the commander of the Second Army, stood up and expressed his opinion impassionately in the face of the Crown Prince and his colleagues. We are fully capable of hitting Sofia and getting Ferdinand I to sign our truce. Edel looked at Lieutenant General Andrew and expressed his opinion. In fact, this opinion should represent the thoughts of the general staff headed by Prezhan. They are all biased towards Edel and are promoted by the Crown Prince. Basically, he lacks in military merit, so I hope to get more credit in this war to make myself more convincing. So in the face of Bulgaria's truce request, they are reluctant to accept it. In the face of Lieutenant General Landru's generous speech, Lieutenant General Salamik, commander of the 3rd Army, had different opinions. I have a different opinion on Lieutenant General Landru's opinion. He first stood up and said his disapproval attitude, and then continued to talk about the reasons. Even if we hit Sofia, our conditions are the limit accepted by Bulgaria, which is not good for us. On the contrary, the interests of other countries have greatly increased. For us, this is typical of doing things for others, so I think we can agree to Bulgaria's request. After Lieutenant General Salamik finished speaking, the other generals in the room were chatting quietly below. Edel himself also agrees with Lieutenant General Salamik. After all, he is not willing to consume too much of Romania's small funds. After he has made it his own point. You must know that in the previous Battle of Tarnovo, the Romanian military fired 15,000 tons of ammunition generously. Almost didn't make Prime Minister Briceanu angry, including the Crown Prince himself was taken aback by the military's consumption. You must know that in the previous military operations, the Romanian army only consumed more than 1,000 tons of ammunition. In a major battle, the consumption increased tenfold. The Romanian family was not strong enough to withstand such major battles. So he was very interested in Lieutenant General Salamik's suggestion. Seeing that the opinions of his deputy, Lieutenant General Andrew, were suppressed by Lieutenant General Salamik, and the most important thing was that the Crown Prince also showed enough interest, Prezhan thought that he needed to stand up and speak his opinion, otherwise continuing the war would change unlikely. Kao sorted out his thoughts and coughed softly. Seeing that the chief of the general staff had something to say, the other military executives present were quiet. Prezhan was very satisfied with the current atmosphere. He said, standing up, "Your Highness, I don't think it's a good time to agree to the Bulgarian armistice." Edel heard the words of the chief of staff, although it was not in line with his wishes, but after all, he was his spokesman in the army, and it was not good to embarrass him in front of the generals, so he took his words and asked, "Then what does Lieutenant General Prezhan mean? We should continue to fight against Bulgaria. It is best to completely defeat their military strength, otherwise we will have to fight again if the conditions are not negotiable." In the face of the Crown Prince's inquiry, Prezhan found a good reason. However, it is difficult to express their position in the face of the military high-level officials below Pili Mountain. After all, they all know that the people behind Pili Mountain are still sitting on the main seat. After hearing the words of the chief of the general staff, Ploiesti, Edel felt in his heart that the people he had promoted were a little anxious. This kind of proposal obviously only takes into account the idea of one's own side and does not take into account the interests of Romania as a whole. Edel secretly decided to water them so they wouldn't be so impatient. At this moment, Admiral Courtois, who was the Minister of War, stood up and spoke slowly. "I also have some opinions of my own that I would like to share." In the face of the Minister of War, who had rarely spoken out in this war, no one would take his opinion lightly. Edel also wanted to see the opinion of General Courtois, who was in charge of the army for his father. Seeing everyone waiting for him quietly, Admiral Courtois gave his advice. "Let's not just think about this war, but the post-war relationship with Bulgaria is also one of our priorities." After he finished saying this, he sat back in his seat and started dozing off like an ordinary old man. However, what he said made all the senior military officials here think to themselves. Although General Courtois did not say whether to continue playing, his attitude has already been shown. It is true that they can continue to fight this time, but Bulgaria is a country, and none of the participating countries has the ability to divide it up. This is also not allowed by the European powers. Then, if it goes too far, it will be difficult for the relations between the two countries to improve in the future. Although Romania is not afraid of Bulgaria now, who wants to have more countries hostile to it, Edel himself was also moved by the words of Admiral Courtois. It is impossible to carve up Bulgaria in the first battle that starts next year. After that, Romania needs to face a red power and will inevitably pay less attention on the flank, so give Bulgaria a little in advance. Showing off is also a good choice. After thinking of this, Edel had already made a choice. He waved his hand to stop General Prezhan, who wanted to continue speaking, and said his decision. After listening to the suggestions of the generals, I fully considered everyone's proposals, and finally I decided to accept the proposal of a truce in Bulgaria. From now on, our Romanian army will stop continuing military operations against Bulgaria. Edel continued to add, after speaking about his decision. However, our army can't withdraw yet. We need to wait until the results of the negotiation come out before withdrawing. I will lead the Chief of the General Staff, Prezhan, to return to Bucharest. The army in Bulgaria is temporarily led by General Cortois. After hearing the decision of Crown Prince Edel Hohenzollern's eyes flashed a trace of loss and immediately recovered. However, when Edel saw it, he didn't care about Ploiesti's mind. If he didn't understand this, the Chief of Staff of the past few years has done nothing. Instead, he said to Admiral Cortois with a smile, "Admiral Cortois needs to work hard for you." Admiral Cortois did not expect that Crown Prince Edel handed over the command of the Romanian army to him, and quickly stood up and spoke. "Please rest assured, Your Highness, I will be optimistic that the army will not let trouble here." The day after Bulgaria's request for a truce, Romania responded to Bulgaria's request, expressing its willingness to truce, while giving Serbia, Greece and Montenegro its own decision. After the three countries saw that the main force of the war agreed, they could only agree to Bulgaria's proposal for a truce. And Enver, the Chief of Staff who led the Ottoman army to attack, also secretly regretted this. Now they are still 50 kilometers away from Adriatic fort. However, when the Balkan countries agreed to a truce, he could not let Ottoman go his own way, and could only stop the actions of the Ottoman army. The Second Balkan War, due to Bulgaria on July 30th, came to a complete halt, this time with Bulgaria's defeat. Now that the smoke on the battlefield has cleared, the time has come for diplomats from various countries to fight for the interests of their own countries. PS Mantau's cold has not been cured yet, so it's late again. I hope you don't blame me. Chapter 157 Negotiations in Bucharest. 1. After the armistice of all countries, negotiations about the interests of the countries to cease from Bulgaria need to be carried out, but the place of negotiation is now the focus of the tearing of the victorious countries among them. The two countries hope that this negotiation will still be held in London. First, the strength of the British Empire is now the largest, and second, it can get the support of the Entente countries. However, the Bulgarian side has long seen through their intentions and declared that it is unwilling to go to London to negotiate, and put forward the opinion of negotiating in Berlin, Germany, but it was rejected by the two countries. Now the two sides about the place of negotiation will propose Vienna and Paris, both of which are making a fortune. The reason why they competed so fiercely was inseparable from their performance in the war. In the eyes of the two countries, we are victorious countries, and should listen to us. Bulgaria, on the other hand, believed that these two countries were defeated by Romania, so in the face of the proposal of the two countries, Bulgaria felt injustice and naturally opposed the proposal. As for Montenegro, who is very self-aware and knows his own weight, he did not participate in this topic. After Edel returned to Bucharest with General Prezhan, he heard from the Foreign Minister Barnosk in the palace that the countries were still wrangling over the negotiation location, frowned and thought for a while before asking, "We haven't commented yet, have we?" "Not yet. But the Prime Minister and I have had quite a few visits from ambassadors and hope we support both sides." Foreign Minister Barnosk told the Crown Prince what had happened in the days after the armistice. As for who supports whom, he doesn't need to tell the Crown Prince Ming. After all, he only needs to pay attention to the current situation to know the opinions of these ambassadors. That's good. After Edel replied, he continued to speak to Foreign Minister Barnosk. "You send a message to both sides and say that we think the other locations are too far away, which is not conducive to everyone's mutual communication. We negotiated in Romania. His Royal Highness means to negotiate in our Bucharest?" Foreign Minister Barnosk confirmed again. Yes. Facing the Foreign Minister's reconfirmation, Edel resolutely stated his thoughts. After getting a very serious answer from the Crown Prince, Foreign Minister Barnosk said quickly, "Okay, Your Highness, I'll do it now." After sending Foreign Minister Barnosk off, Edel walked out of the office. On the way back, Lieutenant General Prezhan also wanted to understand his own problem, and specifically told Edel that they were too impatient. In the face of priest's apology, His Royal Highness, of course, generously said that this time it was nothing, and encouraged him a few words, and said that when General Courtois retired, he would be made the Minister of the Army. In fact, Edel knew that it was Prezhan and the others who had been going well for the past few years, and it was a bit too much. It was very effective to wake them up this time. However, Edel still has to consider finding an opponent for Prezhan after Admiral Courtois retires. After all, the army only has one voice, which is too discordant. After Romania sent a message that the negotiating place should be in Bucharest, the Bulgarian side held discussions on this. Are we going to agree to Romania's proposal now, as planned? After receiving this news, King Ferdinand I of Bulgaria summoned Prime Minister Jeshov, and couldn't wait to ask his opinion immediately. Facing the king's question, Prime Minister Jeshov replied after thinking for a while, "Your Majesty, I think I can agree. The previous dispute between Bulgaria and CE was also proposed by Prime Minister Jeshov. Although he will step down after the negotiation, Prime Minister Jeshov still loves his country and proposed this solution when he saw that Bulgaria was about to suffer huge losses. In fact, this method is very simple to divide the relationship between the Balkan countries. First, provoke a contradiction. To give a hint to the two countries, we Bulgaria will not be afraid to deal with you alone, so we will open less conditions, and at the same time, we will accept the different treatment of Romania. Can we reduce losses? In fact, the strategy is very simple, and it is a stratagem, but simple strategy does not mean that it is not easy to use. There are many very simple strategies in history that have been successful. It is not that they have not been seen, and because doing so allows you to take more, so some tactics were repeatedly used. As for the Ottomans, Prime Minister Jeshov knew they wanted Adrianople, but this was impossible for Bulgaria to accept. In addition, the participating countries have only fought against the Ottoman Empire, so this strategy has little effect on him. In this era changed by Edel, due to the fierce performance of Bulgaria in the early stage, the time for the Ottoman army to participate in the war was delayed a lot. As a result, because Bulgaria surrendered too simply, they were still some distance away from Adriatic fort. So it is impossible for Bulgaria to give up this key city in East Thrace. After hearing the Prime Minister's reply, Ferdinand I replied, "Then send a message to Romania," and we agreed to their proposal. After finishing speaking, Ferdinand I walked up to Prime Minister Jeshov, took his hand, and said with a little guilt, "This time it's really going to be hard work for the Prime Minister." In the face of Ferdinand I's true feelings, Jeshov didn't say much but just replied, "For the homeland of Bulgaria." After speaking, Prime Minister Jeshov saluted the king and walked out of the palace. News spread that Bulgaria agreed to hold a negotiating conference in the Romanian capital Bucharest. Both CE and Bulgaria were tired of tearing up the negotiation site with Bulgaria, and they were relieved after hearing the news. Among them, Serbian Prime Minister Pratik even said to those around him, "I don't know what these Bulgarians are arguing with us." And those who don't know, they think they are the victors. In fact, both countries understand that this is a manifestation of Bulgaria's dissatisfaction with the two countries, but the performance of the CE and the two armies on the battlefield was indeed unsatisfactory. However, this is the result of the Bulgarian raid before, but they are not easy to say this. Then the two countries saw that Bulgaria agreed to Romania's proposal. They did not want to make extra troubles and agreed. As for Montenegro, needless to say, facing this situation, the Ottoman Empire was left alone. Although it was bitter about not capturing Adrianople, it also wanted to try in the negotiation to see if Bulgaria could agree to it, and also agreed to Romania's proposal. Then there are still a few countries, this time just a new place, to start a new negotiation on the Balkan territories. Chapter 158 Negotiations in Bucharest. 2. In the next few days, representatives of the countries participating in the war gathered in Bucharest. Among them, the Serbian negotiating delegation was led by Foreign Minister Milanovic, the Greek negotiating delegation was led by Foreign Minister Constantin, and the Montenegrin Foreign Minister Nidnov also came to Bucharest with negotiators. Since the performance of the three kingdoms in this war was not very good, the foreign ministers of the three countries often come together as a group To keep warm. This time, the Ottoman delegation was led by his foreign minister, Ildaya, who is also a senior member of the Ottoman Al-Shabaab. This time he was able to come here mainly to see if he could get Adriatic fort back. There is no danger to defend between Yabayo and Istanbul, so in the spirit of seeing whether there are three poles, Ottoman also sent negotiators this time. Bulgaria, a defeated country, will also send a negotiating team headed by Prime Minister Jeshov to participate in this negotiation with other countries. And Romania, as the host, will have Prime Minister Bricianu personally participate in the negotiations this time. Representatives from other European countries also sent representatives to watch the negotiation process. Among them, Austria-Hungary had too many interests in the Balkans, so it sent Foreign Minister Erlenthal to watch the whole process. Russia was not to be outdone. In order to support its younger brother, it also sent Foreign Minister Satsunov to watch the whole process. In fact, the two countries also sent their foreign ministers this time for another purpose, which is to stop the Balkan countries from fighting. The previous Balkan War was to compete for the Ottoman European territories. The second time was because of the uneven distribution of countries. The uneven distribution is estimated that the two countries will fight against each other first. Austria-Hungary and Russia were not ready before, and the foreign ministers sent now have no intention of warning them. After the arrival of the Bulgarian negotiating delegation, which was dragged to the end, the countries began to negotiate intensely in the venue prepared by Romania. The first was the conditions put forward by the victorious powers, in which Serbia offered to own the disputed areas of Betrayal and Ohrid to itself, and at the same time, offered to give itself the Bulgarian area of Pivot as compensation. The Greek side proposed to put the previously occupied Thessaloniki area as its own. The Ottoman side proposed that Bulgaria return Adrianople and surrounding areas. Montenegro did not claim territory, and he wanted Bulgaria to pay 2 million levies in war reparations. Romania has the best appetite compared to other countries in the Balkans. He asked Bulgaria to draw its northeastern parts from the small town of Svitov on the Danube along the Preslav town all the way to the Black Sea to the four Bulgarian cities of Dobrich, Rus, Suman, and Varna. About 22,000 square kilometers of territory are assigned to Romania. If they do exactly what they want, then Bulgaria's territorial gains in this Balkan war are not much larger than before, which is a waste of work. Of course, the Bulgarian delegation headed by Prime Minister Jeshov disagreed. He decided to start with the easy and then the hard, and he started with the conditions of Montenegro. He first said that the performance of Montenegro this time is not worthy of Bulgaria's payment for it, and it is right to give him a maximum of 500,000 levs. Then I picked up Greece and said that in the previous agreement on the partition of Macedonia among the three countries, the Thessaloniki area should belong to Bulgaria, but in order to resolve the dispute with Greece, Bulgaria made concessions to divide the Thessaloniki area into two. Among them, Thessaloniki is the boundary. The east belongs to Bulgaria, and the west belongs to Greece. However, for the principle of Bulgaria's sacrifice, the city of Thessaloniki should belong to Bulgaria. In the face of Serbia's conditions, he first said that the pivot area cannot be used as compensation, and the Bitila and Ohrid areas should belong to Bulgaria as in the previous agreement. This time we are also willing to settle the dispute. The Ohrid region near Serbia belongs to Serbia, and the Bitila region should belong to Bulgaria. As for the conditions under which the Ottomans demanded that Bulgaria return Adrianople and surrounding areas to them, Prime Minister Jeshov directly said that this was impossible, and no Bulgarians dared to agree to such conditions. As for the East Thrace region that the Ottoman army has now occupied, he thought that part of the Ottoman Empire could be allocated as compensation, and the rest had to be returned to Bulgaria. In the face of Romania's conditions, he first admitted that the 4,000 square kilometers of territory allocated to Romania in the previously signed treaty should take effect immediately. In order to appease Romania's anger that Romania had not obtained the territory it deserved due to the treaty, Bulgaria was willing to give Romania an additional 4,000 square kilometers of territory, so that Romania would fully occupy the city of Dobrich, and at the same time, move the border forward by 20-25 kilometer distance. The representatives of the countries were not satisfied with the conditions of Prime Minister Jeshov, the Bulgarian negotiator. In particular, the host Romanian Prime Minister Brătianu reacted the most. He even said, "If Bulgaria does not meet Romania's conditions, the war will not stop." Prime Minister Brătianu's remarks were supported by the foreign ministers of Serbia, Greece and Montenegro, saying that meeting Romania's conditions is a basis for the peace talks. In the face of this situation, where all countries are doing lay-fang, Prime Minister Geshev does not know how to deal with it. Then, citing physical discomfort, he temporarily suspended the negotiation for a day to investigate what was going on. How about it? In the original Bulgarian embassy, Geshev was really asking the foreign minister Dariusz, who had visited the German and Austrian representatives. During the day, when he got arrested, Prime Minister Geshev couldn't go out due to bad health. So the foreign minister Dariusz had to go to Austria, Hungary and Germany, who supported him, to get news. Seeing Prime Minister Geshev's eagerness to know the result, Foreign Minister Dariusz told the news that he had inquired. "The situation is not good. What I have inquired about from His Excellency Sasunov is that Romania's conditions were negotiated before entering the war, and the two countries must support Romania's demands. It was also endorsed by Russia. It's hard for us now." In fact, the Romanian side deliberately released the news when he got the news. After all, Romania is in control of the situation now, so it is entirely possible to let Bulgaria know this news. After hearing the words of Foreign Minister Dariusz, Prime Minister Geshev continued to ask his own concerns. "And what about Austria, Hungary and Germany's support for us? The hope of reducing losses now rests entirely on the support of Germany and Austria-Hungary. Germany's support for us is limited to the conditions of Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro. We hope that we can combine the conditions of Ottoman with reality. As for the conditions of Romania, they let us decide by ourselves. And Austria-Hungary supports us much more. In addition to hoping that we can fully consider the situation in Romania, I agree with the conditions we gave before." After listening to Foreign Minister Dariusz's words, Geshev learned that neither Austria-Hungary nor Germany were willing to support him on Romanian conditions, and felt a little disappointed. Now Romanian conditions have become a prerequisite for this negotiation, much to the nerves of Prime Minister Geshev. However, Romania has to cede too much territory this time, reaching 1/7 of Bulgaria's existing territory, which makes it difficult for Prime Minister Geshev to make a decision. Finally, he decided to report the situation to King Ferdinand I, and let the country decide whether to accept this condition. Chapter 159 Negotiations in Bucharest 3. King Ferdinand I of Bulgaria, who had been following the negotiation process, immediately summoned Lieutenant General Savov, the Minister of War. After receiving the telegram that Prime Minister Geshev introduced in detail. He showed Lieutenant General Savov the telegram sent by Prime Minister Geshev to watch. After reading the conditions put forward by the various countries, the Minister of War knew very well the purpose of King Ferdinand I calling him. After seeing Lieutenant General Savov read it, Ferdinand I asked, "What do you think of the conditions of various countries?" After Lieutenant General Savov thought for a while, he said it word for word. "Your Majesty, I think there is room for negotiation between countries. We can." Hearing Lieutenant General Savov's explanation, Ferdinand I waved his hand to stop the War Minister from continuing. "If we don't agree to Romania's conditions, the peace talks will not go ahead. This time I'm looking for you, mainly to ask what the military thinks about it." Hearing the words of King Ferdinand I, Lieutenant General Savov knew what to ask. However, the Bulgarian army really can't beat Romania, and in the Prime Minister's telegram, Austria-Hungary and Germany also do not support Bulgaria on this issue, which makes Lieutenant General Savov, who actually controls the Bulgarian army, have nothing to say. Seeing the silent Lieutenant General Savov, Ferdinand I knew what the army was thinking. They wanted to pretend they didn't know, but Ferdinand I wanted to pretend he didn't know, but he couldn't. Looking at Lieutenant General Savov standing there awkwardly, Ferdinand I waved and said, "Then it's alright, let's go down." After receiving an answer from Lieutenant General Savov on behalf of the Bulgarian military, Ferdinand I sent a telegram to Prime Minister Geshev in the evening. As mentioned above, Prime Minister Jeshov is solely responsible for this negotiation. The Prime Minister who received the telegram knew that this was what Ferdinand I had told him to promise, but it was a nice euphemism. Looking at the telegram sent from the country in his hands, Prime Minister Jeshov said that Foreign Minister Dirasnoch said, "This time he will let me negotiate alone." Hearing Prime Minister Jeshov's words, Foreign Minister Dirasnoch said with a wry smile, "Your Excellency, do you think I can stay in politics after this negotiation?" Prime Minister Jeshov thinks that this is indeed the case. This time, he deliberately selected some people who are not optimistic. He did not bring any political stars he was optimistic about, just to not delay the future of others. This time their purpose is clear, to sign a humiliating peace treaty for Bulgaria. Prime Minister Jeshov just wants to reduce losses for Bulgaria, and he doesn't even dare to think about negotiating for countries to make concessions. After receiving the domestic telegram, Prime Minister Jeshov also did not directly sign the Romanian conditions proposed by Prime Minister Briceanu, and repeatedly in the Prime Minister of Romania, "I hope to reduce losses for Bulgaria." However, Prime Minister Briceanu, who now has a huge advantage, remains unmoved and insists on Romania's conditions, leaving Prime Minister Jeshov helpless. In the end, 5 days later, he agreed to Romania's conditions in full, but he was not without gains in his persevering negotiations. He won the ceded territory of Romania for Bulgaria, and the local people could choose whether to go to Bulgaria or stay there. The Romanian government will give 20 million leva of humanitarian funds to Bulgaria for these people to migrate. However, Bulgaria will also open up the Romanian nationality in the country to allow them to migrate to Romania. For this, Romania will also provide 5 million leva of aid to allow Bulgaria to provide convenience. The management is based on the name of aid funds. In fact, everyone knows that this is a compensation given by Romania to get Bulgaria to agree to this condition, just for the sake of good reputation, and not embarrassing the Bulgarian government. After negotiating Romania's conditions, other countries had a better time to talk, especially Montenegro. After a price increase, Prime Minister Jeshov asked Montenegrin negotiators to agree, and Bulgaria compensated him for the compensation amount of 0 levs. In the Serbian negotiations, Prime Minister Jeshov and his Foreign Minister Milanovic clashed fiercely over very different terms. To this end, it also led to the powers behind their respective support. In the end, this negotiation turned into a confrontation between the Austrian-Hungarian Foreign Minister Erlenthal and the Russian Foreign Minister Sasunov. Russia has a stronger national power than Austria-Hungary, but Austria-Hungary did not give in after receiving German support. In addition, the performance of the Serbian army this time is not as good as that of Bulgaria, and finally each took a step back. Serbia will no longer seek to hold other Macedonian territories, while Bulgaria will no longer claim sovereignty over Bitola and Ohrid. This is a good result for Bulgaria at the moment. Then in the negotiation with Greece, because the United Kingdom was unwilling to go too deep on the Balkan issue. In the words of British Prime Minister Asquith, instead of spending more time in the Balkans, we should spend more time looking at the German shipbuilding program. So Greece didn't get much support in the Bucharest negotiation, and Russia, after securing the interests of Serbia, its own son, only gave its support to Greece, the British younger brother, and France, not to mention, in the Balkans they completely not interested. So Greece finally faced Bulgaria with the support of Austria-Hungary, and Germany could only accept Prime Minister Jeshov's conditions. The southern part of the Thessaloniki region was obtained, and the city of Thessaloniki was finally assigned to Bulgaria. And Bulgaria received the islands of Phasis and Samonia, its new territory, as compensation for its concessions. For this reason, the Greek negotiator Constantine Foreign Minister can only bear the fact that he can only accept the fact that the Greek army performed so poorly before. During the final negotiations with the Ottoman Empire, Prime Minister Jeshov had a round of confrontation with his representative Foreign Minister Aldaya. However, under the coordination of Austria-Hungary and Germany, the two countries now take the actual occupation of territory as a standard, which actually makes both Bulgaria and Ottoman not very satisfied. However, after seeing that Bulgaria and other countries had reached peace talks, Ottoman Foreign Minister Yildiz could only sign the treaty after asking the country for instructions, because Germany promised to help the Ottoman Empire to give up its unrealistic ideas, and the Ottoman military had assessed the performance of the two Bulgarian wars and believed that it wanted to take Yadri against the Bulgarian army alone. Aber is a bit impractical. So in the end, under the circumstance of Austria-Hungary and Germany, I agreed to this condition. The countries that finally participated in the Second Balkan War finally signed the Treaty of Bucharest on the day of the month. Romania became the biggest winner in this treaty. With his foresight and the strong fighting power of the Romanian army, Crown Prince Edel made Bulgaria have to swallow the fact that it lost its 22,000 territories. Serbia did not perform well in this war, but still won the Bitola and Ohrid areas due to Russian support. Greece is more tragic. In the absence of strong support from major powers, coupled with the lack of strength of its own army on the battlefield, it only grabbed half of the Thessaloniki area, and also lost two islands of Phasis and Samo. An island. It is a dark loss in the end. The Ottomans took back the Tekkida region of East Thrace, while the Adriatic fort, which was crucial to it, was still in Bulgarian hands. As for the defeated country Bulgaria, although it lost the above territory, it was still much better than the original time and space. He at least kept most of the results of its First Balkan War, mainly Macedonia and most of Thrace. Its population has also soared from 4.45 million before the Balkan Wars to 500,000, mainly due to the acquisition of 26 people on new territories, although 50,000 Bulgarians live on the territory ceded to Romania. It is believed that the propaganda of the Bulgarian government can attract about 200,000 Bulgarians to return. In the original history, Bulgaria only increased its population by 20,000 after the two Balkan Wars. As for Serbia, the population has grown from 3 million before the two Balkan Wars to 4.2 million, which is 300,000 less than the 4.5 million in the original history. The main reason is that it did not get Strumica, which belongs to Macedonia, from Bulgaria and Karadaki area. Greece has also increased its population from 220,000 to about 4 million, which is 500,000 less than the 4.5 million in the original history. It was mainly unable to obtain the entire Thessaloniki region and western Thrace from Bulgaria. Two small islands were also lost, which is considered to be a steal. The biggest loser in the two wars was the Ottoman Empire, whose European territory was only the area around Istanbul. Losing most of its European territory also reduced its population of about 4.6 million. PS readers who want to see the territorial division of various countries can check the scum map from Manfa in the questions group. Chapter 160 Army Commendation. The British newspaper The Times reported on the treaty after the countries signed the treaty in Bucharest. This war in the Balkans was triggered by the uneven division of territorial issues among countries, in which the Alliance and the Entente both played different roles. After commenting on the war, the Times focused on Romania's performance in the war. While all eyes were on the war between Bulgaria and CE, Romania, the most powerful country in the Balkans, ended the war. The Battle of Tarnovo caused heavy losses to Bulgaria, known as Balkan Prussia, and could only change the current situation by seeking peace. As for Romania, we just know that this country has a lot of grain and oil, its cars and agricultural machinery are good, and it is well received in European countries. But it all started 8 years ago, when Romanians received a £12.5 million industrial aid loan from Germany. This loan marked the beginning of Romania's road to industrialization. Then Romania built a modern petrochemical plant, and also established a car manufacturing industry, with a large number of cars exported to Europe. Until now, the Model T has been considered the most affordable passenger car, and its Dongfeng trucks have also replaced freight wagons in various places, accounting for most of the short-distance transportation industry. Now all countries need to consult their opinions on what needs to be done in the Balkans, because this country has become a topic that cannot be avoided in the Balkans. We have reason to believe that during the confrontation between Austria-Hungary and Russia, Romania was the military police of the Balkan Peninsula, and he was also obliged to ensure that the countries on the peninsula were free from war. Now the freshly baked Times is on Edel's desk. For the praise of the Times, Edel smiled and passed If he really does not know how to accept this title, his head is abnormal. Now that both Austria-Hungary and Russia are there, how can Romania have this ability, unless it is possible to divide the inheritance from these two powers after World War I? Despite his disdain for this report, Edel still saw the Entente's goodwill towards Romania. It seems that they also feel that Russia is under a little pressure on the Eastern Front alone, and hope to reduce the pressure on Russia. However, Edel, who knows the history of World War I, how could he change his current position just because of this gesture? In a word, the Entente promised Romania the entire Balkan Peninsula, and he would not join the Entente immediately. This is completely because he wants to destroy himself. Not much fortune point. Just when Edel sighed for this, the captain of the guard, Karist, walked in. Point, Your Highness, the officers are here. Point, after hearing the report from the captain of the guards, Edel stood up, tidied up his clothes, and told him, then let's go. Point, in fact, the Romanian army is still retreating from Bulgaria to various domestic stations under the command of General Courtois, Minister of the Army. Of course, a large garrison of troops was temporarily needed in the newly acquired territory to suppress the Bulgarians who had already belonged to Romania, so the General Staff left the 12th and 17th Divisions as garrison. Point, however, the reward for meritorious deeds must be carried out first, and the officers should not feel that their hard work was in vain. Therefore, on the third day after the peace talks, the officers who needed the reward handed over the retreat to their deputies and left their respective units to arrive. Bucharest. Because the old king was in poor health, the crown prince himself was the one who awarded the awards to the meritorious officers this time. Point, in the hall, the 20 or 30 officers on the award list chatted in their own small circles. Among them, Lieutenant General Prezhan, the chief of the general staff, had the most officers. They all knew the news that Prezhan was going to be promoted to general. However, there are some people with generals on the epaulettes around him who can approach the speech. Point, on the other side is a current division commander of the 12th Division, Major General Ploiesti, who also had some officers chatting around him. This time the battle of the 12th Division in Tarnovo was considered a lot of hard work, which also allowed him to add a general star to his epaulettes. He is now seen by many as the next rising military boss in the Romanian army, as he is rumored to be taking over as the retiring military education director. This position will bring him a lot of network support, so it will become entirely possible to take over as chief of the general staff in the future. Point, Major Hoffman, who was in an inconspicuous corner, looked at everything in front of him and felt very envious, thinking in his heart that he might be surrounded by the center as a core. It's a bit embarrassing for him to appear here this time. He is now the deputy head of the Motor Transport Regiment, and he was added to the list of awards for his achievements in transporting materials. At present, there are about 400 Dongfeng trucks in a car transport group in Romania, and there are about 1,200 people in a transport group with maintenance and maintenance personnel. Point, after Major Hoffman was spotted by the Crown Prince at the military academy, he was first transferred to the Crown Prince as a captain to investigate, and was sent to the cavalry division as a staff officer to improve his actual combat level. Because there were no armored vehicles in Romania, he was promoted to 1 level and transferred to the Automobile Transportation Regiment to be the deputy head of the mechanized operation. The result caught up with the war and went to the battlefield with the transport regiment, but it was only transporting ammunition. Point, I was lucky enough to be on the award list because of my ability. However, the credit for the logistics is a bit indescribable after all. Now all the troops still think that only the credit for killing the enemy is the most glorious, and Major Hoffman is no exception. Facing this, he couldn't explain the credit, so he could only find a corner and watch it quietly. Point, just when these officers took advantage of this rare opportunity to get to know each other, Edel brought the chief of guards to the hall where these generals were commended. Point, His Royal Highness Edel is here. Point, with the announcement of the guards, the officers who were still sitting lined up according to their respective positions and merits to wait for the arrival of the Crown Prince. Among them, Lieutenant General Prezhan stood at the forefront, followed by Major General Ploiesti, and Major Hoffman consciously ranked at the end of the team. Point, I have seen Your Highness. After seeing the Crown Prince come in, Lieutenant General Ploiesti led a group of officers to salute Edel neatly. This made Edel look at the neat military salute and feel that his thoughts were not in vain, and he was very satisfied and waved to the group of officers looking at the heroic officers in front of him. Edel also faced them with pride and began to talk about his expectations for them. You officers who have contributed to Romania, it was your efforts that made the Romanian army perform so well in this war. On behalf of the royal family and the people, I thank you for your efforts to change the way European countries think about the Romanian army. After the Crown Prince said a short thank you, the Romanian officers present shouted in unison, "All glory to the kingdom for Romania." After a brief and inspiring opening remarks, the exciting commendation began. The officers present stood still, and Edel started with the head of General Preshan. Edel stood in front of Ploiesti and looked at his confidant who had been with him for nearly 10 years. Lieutenant General Preshan is now awarded the rank of general because of his perfect leadership and planning of the war against Bulgaria, and he personally led the first army in the war with outstanding performance. Edel first took off the Lieutenant General's epaulet of General Preshan, and then took the pair of 3-star epaulets representing the rank of general from the tray in the guard's hand, and put it on him. The Crown Prince held Ploiesti's hand and said, "Congratulations to Admiral Ploiesti." Glancing at the rank of admiral that he was thinking about, Chief of Staff Ploiesti said a little excitedly, "For the kingdom." After finishing his promotion to Preshan, Edel walked up to Major General Fried beside him. It was still the captain of the guard behind him who loudly read out the reason for the promotion. Major General Ferit made an irreplaceable contribution to annihilating the main force and defeating the Bulgarian army in the decisive Battle of Tarnovo with Bulgaria, so he was promoted to Lieutenant General. Edel took off the 1-star epaulet of Major General Friet and put on it the 2-star epaulet representing the Lieutenant General. "Congratulations to Lieutenant General Fleet." Looking at the 2-star Lieutenant General on the same shoulder, Lieutenant General Ferit was no better than Preshan, and he said excitedly, "For the kingdom." Later, Edel successively awarded promotion awards to other meritorious personnel, but not every officer could be promoted. Only half of them were promoted on the spot, and the rest were only available for various medals. Although these officers only have medals, they still look happy because they can be personally commended by the Crown Prince, which means that the promotion is in sight. But it is not worth the Crown Prince to wear the military rank in person. When the award was about to be completed, Edel finally walked up to the last Major Hoffman. He glanced at Major Hoffman who had been by his side and picked up a crown medal and put it on him. Standing behind the Crown Prince, the head guard of Kerist continued to read the reason for obtaining it. Major Hoffman in this war, in order to ensure the transportation of the materials used, arrange the transportation tasks reasonably, and fully guarantee the ammunition supply of the front line, for which he won a crown medal. Congratulations, Major Hoffman. Despite not being promoted, Major Hoffman said with satisfaction, "For the kingdom." This time, one person was promoted to general, one was promoted to lieutenant general, 2 were promoted to major general, 5 others were promoted to colonel, and 3 were promoted to lieutenant colonel. The remaining officers were awarded various medals, and Edel took a group photo with them after the awards. Later, someone took the photo of this group photo. 3 of them became marshals, 2 became generals, 5 became lieutenants, and 4 became major generals. They all led the Romanian army to fight bloody battles for the country in World War I and World War II. The old PS group has exploded, and the new group 702,936,345 can be added, if you are interested. Chapter 161 War Expenses. After awarding his meritorious officers, Edel returned to the office, because in the afternoon Prime Minister Bricianu had to report on the cost of the war and the administrative division of the new territories. After having lunch with his parents, the king and wife Carol and his wife, Princess Sophie Mary, Prime Minister Bricianu came to Edel, before he could stay in the office for a while. But Prime Minister Bricianu began to complain as soon as he came in. "Your Highness, the war cost more than our budget of 50 million lei." Hearing the Prime Minister's grievances, Edel sat in a chair to reassure him. "At least this war is over, isn't it?" Then he continued to ask his own concerns. "Then Prime Minister, how much will our war cost?" Prime Minister Bricianu glanced at his own information and said, Our total expenditure in this war has reached 73.2 million lei, mainly because the consumption of artillery shells is too large, reaching 15,000 tons. In particular, the stock of heavy artillery shells has been destroyed by half. The consumption of bullets has also reached 40 million rounds, accounting for our stockpile, 1/5 of it. Apart from ammunition consumption, which is the biggest expense, our military rations are the biggest expense, especially for horses. Edel knew about the consumption of ammunition. On the first day of the Battle of Tarnovo, 4,600 tons of ammunition were destroyed. In the following days, although the use of ammunition was relatively restrained, it was not less than 1,500 tons per day. In this case, the money is just like running water. You must know that a 75 cannon shell costs 30 lei, and the most expensive 210 cannon shell costs 1,350 lei, and this war is just 210 caliber shells. More than 3,000 rounds. The money for artillery shells is more than 4 million lei, not counting the consumption of other troops, adding up more. As for the food consumption of horses, it goes without saying that these horses are the ones that can consume the most food during the war. Each horse needs to eat 3 kilograms of grain and 6 kilograms of hay every day, and Romania used a total of 38,000 horses to participate in the war. That's still the result of having more than 3,000 cars as a supplement, and more if it's all horses. After introducing the cost of the war, Prime Minister Bricianu went on to talk about other costs. We haven't counted the pensions for the casualties. The pensions we plan to give to the fallen soldiers are based on the 50-month salary of senior sergeants, a total of 4,200 lei. The rest of the fallen officers are from their previous posts. 50 months of salary. Due to the current financial pressure, we are going to pay it off in 5 years. At the same time, we will let the local government take care of these families of fallen soldiers. After hearing the Prime Minister's words, Edel nodded in approval of the government's proposal. In the Balkans, this is already a good amount. You must know that the British Empire only has a soldier's death pension of £300, while the Balkan countries are even lower. Among them, Bulgaria is only 2,800 lei, Serbia is 3,150 lei, and Greece is only 3,400 lei. Amount of Iraq. This is also due to the fact that Romania's fiscal revenue reached a new high last year. At the end of 1912, the Romanian government revenue reached 616 million lei. Although the Ottoman Empire briefly closed the Black Sea Strait at that time, Romania's economic growth has not slowed down due to its excellent products and proper handling, and it still reached a growth rate of 7.1. So for our soldiers who have been discharged due to injuries, does the government have any arrangements? After asking about the pensions of the fallen soldiers, Edel became concerned about the soldiers who could not continue to serve in the army due to their injuries and disabilities. In Edel's perception, many countries in Europe are now giving disabled soldiers a resettlement fee and leaving them alone in society. For him, who has been recognized by later generations, he thinks this is too impersonal. This would make many soldiers who made heroic sacrifices for their country a destabilizing factor in society. So he told the Prime Minister before that he would give social help to these soldiers. Now let's see how the Prime Minister has done. In the face of the Crown Prince's question, Prime Minister Bricianu told him the plans made by the government before. Our government believes that for those soldiers who are not able to take care of themselves, we can give them an 80% subsidy of their in-service salary, and we expect to give 50 months of receiving time. For those soldiers who are disabled, we are prepared to give a subsidy of 70% of the monthly salary on the job. It also gives 50 months of time to receive it, and then, in the face of the Crown Prince's questioning, Prime Minister Bricianu glanced at the plan prepared by the government and said, "Your Highness, that's all." After hearing the Prime Minister's words, Edel said quite dissatisfiedly, "These are far from enough. We can't let the soldiers who fought bravely for the country give them a batch of money and send them away. We must give them care from the society and let his comrades still in the army know that they have protected them. The kingdom will also be their support after the injury and retirement." Prime Minister Bricianu said clearly, "His Royal Highness, now all European countries deal with it this way, and we also follow the practice of various countries." Facing the Prime Minister's rhetoric, Edel knew he was telling the truth. However, when he thought about the practices of later generations in his mind, it was too long for him to remember a little. But who called him the Crown Prince? He still talked about it with vague memory. The government should try to arrange these soldiers who have retired due to injuries to various government departments. They can't fight. Can't they sweep the floor or guard the government's gate? If there is no way, give them an extended period of time to get their pensions. After Edel finished speaking, he touched his head and felt that his memory of his past life became more and more vague and deeply rogue. He was afraid that he would forget to write down secretly about historical events, but he almost forgot every bit of his normal life in his previous life. Almost their point after hearing a few suggestions from the Crown Prince. Prime Minister Betrayal was worthy of being a political expert and immediately added it to the Crown Prince. His Royal Highness, our government department will also place these wounded veterans in state-run factories. Let them be responsible for cleaning or patrolling in the factory. They are also qualified candidates. Then the police department will receive a batch. Let them have nothing to worry about. If they can't do that, then the government can extend the pension period to 60 months. Hearing Prime Minister Betrayal's approach, Edel nodded with satisfaction and told him, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister's plan is very good. Just follow this principal point. Seeing that Edel was still satisfied with his arrangement, Prime Minister Betrayal said bitterly, If this is the case, our war will cost as much as 150 million lei, and the government's budget deficit this year is estimated to reach 80 million lei. We will have a hard time for the next 2 years. Hearing the cry of Prime Minister Betrayal, Edel was not afraid at all. Now all countries are avoiding fiscal deficits like snakes and scorpions. It would be strange if any country in future generations had no fiscal deficits. In addition to the special time next year, Edel told him proudly, Don't be afraid, you can run the budget deficit next year at the level of 200 million lei. Hearing the surprising words of the Crown Prince, Prime Minister Betrayal was shocked and said quickly, His Royal Highness, it's easy for us to go bankrupt like this. Facing the Prime Minister's uneasy expression, Edel couldn't tell him, The European war next year, the deficit you care about is impossible. So I can only pretend to be generous. It doesn't matter, the royal family won't let it go. Prime Minister Betrayal, who was given a carrot by the Crown Prince, knew that the assets of the royal family had multiplied several times in the past few years, and he was able to handle the possible problems of the government, so he felt relieved and stepped back. After reporting Go Down. Chapter 162. The prototype of the armored force. After discussing the cost of the war and the military pension with the Prime Minister, Edel took a short break and met with Major Hoffman, who had been waiting outside the door for a long time. He called this Major Hoffman this time to prepare for the establishment of Romania's first armored car unit. In fact, as early as 1855, British J. Cohen installed machine guns and armor on the chassis of a steam tractor, made a wheeled armored vehicle, and obtained a patent. But this armored vehicle has not been put into practical use. In 1899, British Sims installed armor and a machine gun on a four-wheeler. In 1900, the British put armored cars into the Anglo-Bulgarian War that was going on in South Africa. However, this kind of car has too many problems, and it can only be driven on the road, and there is no good result. However, all countries have seen its potential and have invested in research and development. Being a Chinese was one of the first countries to recognize the importance of armored vehicles. The reason can be traced back to the Russo-Japanese War in 1904 to 1905. In the Russo-Japanese War, the Cossack cavalry, which made the Russians proud, was often beaten upside down in front of the powerful firepower of the Japanese machine guns and artillery. The fact of the harsh blood makes people of insight in the Russian military feel that an armored vehicle with both mobility and firepower must be developed. Among them, the most active advocate was General M. Nakazais, the general of the Russian Siberian Cossack cavalry. In 1905, Nakazais designed Russia's first armored vehicle, named Nakaxiang armored vehicle. This is all about installing 5.6mm steel plates directly on a car, and then installing a Maxim machine gun. However, this simple and crude approach severely overloaded the armored vehicle, which could only travel at a speed of 25 km per hour, and it was the same problem. Edel has considered building armored vehicles before, but because armored vehicles are now directly modified on the car, and there are many problems, they have not been developed for the time being. But because World War I was about to break out, he thought now was the time. Now Romania has the largest automobile manufacturing industry in Europe, and it is still no problem to refit an armored vehicle. And there are already countries that have converted Romanian Dongfeng vehicles into armored vehicles. This is Belgium. This low country has converted 2 Dongfeng trucks before, and installed an open baffle in front of the cab, and then installed it on the back of the car. The machine gun baffle that can rotate, plus a Maxim machine gun, is quite a style of the later pickup plus machine gun. However, this was also seen in the newspapers by Crown Prince Edel, and now Crown Prince Edel intends to form his own armored vehicle unit for a bit. However, his ultimate goal was the King of Land battle tank, so he found Major Hoffman, who was still in the motor transport regiment. I have seen Your Highness. Major Hoffman, who was wearing a light blue major uniform, walked into Crown Prince Edel's office and saluted the Crown Prince. Looking at Major Hoffman, who was probably the pioneer of the Romanian armored force, Edel said with a smile, "Are you still used to it in the army?" Hearing the Crown Prince's caring words, Major Hoffman, who is of German descent in his bones, stood straight in front of the Crown Prince and answered loudly, "Thanks to His Highness for your concern. I have learned a lot of things in the army that cannot be taught in books, which enriched me a lot." Seeing Major Hoffman, who was in good spirits, Edel said directly, "Remember the scene where I met you in the classroom?" "Of course I remember, Your Highness. Do we want to form such a unit in Romania?" In the face of the Crown Prince's question, Major Hoffman certainly remembered it. At the time, he was debating the use of armored vehicles for assault at the military academy with Riksova instructors, which was overheard by the Crown Prince, which is why he was favored by Edel. Could it be that the Crown Prince is looking for himself for this reason? Major Hoffman spoke his mind without making him think too much. Edel replied directly, "Yes, I plan to set up such a battalion-level experimental force. And now to be the chief officer of this force, I think you are the most suitable one in the Romanian army." In the face of the Crown Prince's decision to appoint himself as the chief officer of the 1st Armored Force, Major Hoffman was very excited. Having spent enough experience in the cavalry unit and truck transport regiment, he has long wanted to train an ideal unit in his mind. However, given his current status and qualifications, this is impossible. Fortunately, he met His Royal Highness Edel, and the most important thing is that the Crown Prince recognized his ideas. Now faced with the results at your fingertips, Major Hoffman said excitedly, "Thank you His Royal Highness for your trust in me. I will lead this unit and experiment with the best way to use this new unit." Looking at Major Hoffman, whose face was flushed with excitement in front of him, Edel opened a drawer of his desk and took out a few drawings from it. This is his sketch of armored vehicles from World War II to modern times in his memory of his few past lives. He hopes that Major Hoffman's modified armored vehicle can be used, mainly because he is full of malice for the appearance of the current armored vehicle. Now the appearance of European armored vehicles can't be seen. He can't control foreign armored vehicles, but Romania's future armored vehicles must not be disabled. Edel took out some sketches and handed them to Major Hoffman. "Here are some of my visions for Romania's future armored vehicles. I hope you can take a look." Hearing the Crown Prince's words, Major Hoffman took over the Crown Prince's sketch and began to read it. Edel mainly painted the SDKFZ 221 wheeled armored vehicle, the SDKFZ 234 wheeled armored vehicle, as well as the American M8 wheeled armored vehicle, and the Japanese Type 92 wheeled armored vehicle that was most watched on TV that year. Looking at these scribbled vehicle sketches, Major Hoffman didn't quite understand it, but he basically guessed who the author of these sketches was from the expectant eyes of the Crown Prince. How about it? In the face of the Crown Prince's inquiry, although he didn't understand it very clearly, Major Hoffman was very smart, and he answered solemnly, "His Royal Highness, these sketches are very good. They are very helpful for me to build armored vehicles. I hope to discuss the situation of armored vehicles with the sketch author. Serious nonsense can be very deceiving, especially if this person has never talked indiscriminately. A few sentences occasionally are very effective. His Highness Edel was unfortunate to be a victim of this truth, and he believed the words of Major Hoffman. For this reason, he had to make up an excuse indiscriminately. It was designed by an automotive engineer, but he's out of the country now. For the crappy reason of the Crown Prince, Major Hoffman said with a regretful look on his face. It's so disappointing. I hope to have a good chat with this very thoughtful engineer next time. There will be a chance. Major Hoffman now asks the question of greatest concern. His Royal Highness, how much equipment has been prepared for this experimental unit? Edel also understood Major Hoffman's mood. When he knew that he was going to form a new unit, funding was always the most worrying thing. It was not cheap to have to go through armored vehicles, and it also included the cost of modification and weapons. Glancing at Major Hoffman with a concerned face, Edel told him the prepared budget. I'm going to give you 800,000 lei for the purchase. You can go to the Volkswagen factory and make your own request. Hearing the amount given by the Crown Prince, Major Hoffman calculated in his heart that it seems that it can only be formed according to the model of the Motor Transport Group. And for these funds, it is estimated that you can only choose two simple looking models and try to build two to see. Major Hoffman, who was muttering to himself, still spoke confidently. Thanks to His Royal Highness for their support, I will go to the Volkswagen factory to seek their support. After saluting the Crown Prince, the Major Hoffman left the Crown Prince's office in anticipation of the imminent formation of a new force. Facing Edel's summons this time, although there is still a little bit of money in terms of funding, other aspects are too good for him. Looking at Major Hoffman, who left with a satisfied expression, Edel knew that this armored vehicle unit was only a replacement now, and he was laying the foundation for future tanks. PS number 6 Mantou needs to be delayed for a while. If I come back early, I will try to code it out for everyone to see. In fact, this book is a work of practice for steamed buns. So I will read more on the premise of ensuring the quality. Let's not discuss the topic of whether this book will be a eunuch. I will reiterate it here for the last time. This book will never be a eunuch. I still expect this book to practice and make money. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163 New Trucks. Major Hoffman, glad to be here. I don't know what Volkswagen can do for you. In Volkswagen, General Manager Minoba said politely to the Major, named Hoffman in front of him. The reason for him to speak like this is that the Major brought a handwritten instruction from the Crown Prince himself, which asked the Volkswagen factory to cooperate with the Major's work. If it wasn't for Edel signed instructions, Major Hoffman would not have seen the busy General Manager this time. The Crown Prince brought me here because he needed an armored car, and the Volkswagen factory has the best craftsmanship and technology in all of Europe. Major Hoffman also knows that he has pulled tiger skins to make big flags and use the prestige of the Crown Prince to do things in the face of Major Hoffman's first use of the Crown Prince's prestige, and then flattering the Volkswagen company. The General Manager Minoba has seen a lot, but he still disagrees. He still knew about armored vehicles. Yes, we have the best technology in the Volkswagen factory. So what car does Major Hoffman need as a basis for an armored car? In the face of the General Manager Minoba's inquiry, Major Hoffman knew that only Volkswagen's Dongfeng trucks could meet his requirements. However, the armored vehicle modified by Dongfeng truck only weighs 4 tons at most, which is a bit inconsistent with its own requirements. He still wants to ask if Volkswagen has other models. Mr. Minoba, I don't know if Volkswagen has other vehicles with heavier loads than Dongfeng trucks. In the face of Major Hoffman's question, Minoba did not answer. He called his secretary. Have Director Tusslett come over. After seeing the secretary, who had been instructed to leave, General Manager Minoba turned his head and told Major Hoffman with a smile, if you had come a month earlier, I would have told you that there is really no one, but now there is. I will ask the technical director Tusslett to take you to see it later, which should meet your requirements. The new car that Minoba is talking about is an emerging car that Crown Prince Edel asked them to develop with a load of 3 to 5 tons. It was only finalized last month and is still being tested in the factory. After a while, Technical Director Tusslett appeared in front of them, sweating and wearing a greasy shirt. He saw Major Hoffman sitting in the general manager's office, and he still asked the general manager Minoba first point, is something wrong with the general manager? Minoba pointed to Hoffman. This is Major Hoffman, and he's here for the armored car. Hello. Major Hoffman point. Tuslid stretched out his hand, which was still greasy. Point. Hello. Director Tuslid point. Major Hoffman held Tuslid's oily hand, also expressing his goodwill. Point. Seeing that both of them knew each other, General Manager Minoba told them. Director Tuslid, take this Major Hoffman to the test site for the new car. After hearing the words of General Manager Minoba, Tuslid spoke to Major Hoffman. Why don't we look at this new truck first? Point. Major Hoffman also wanted to see the car they were talking about, so he told Director Tuslid. Then please lead the way. Point. After Major Hoffman finished speaking, he turned his head and thanked General Manager Minoba. Thank you very much for your support. Point. You don't have to be so polite when you do things for the Crown Prince. Point. Glancing at Major Hoffman walking out of his office, Minoba was busy again. As the general manager of Volkswagen, he had too many things to deal with. Point. Tuslid took Major Hoffman out of the office and walked through the factory, introducing him to the new car. Major Hoffman, this new truck is our Volkswagen masterpiece. It can pull 5 tons of cargo and travel 160 kilometers on a full tank of fuel. A truly remarkable masterpiece. Point. Of course, we have been developing this car for 4 years, and we have overcome more than 200 problems. For this new car, I once slept in the R/U0026D Center for 3 months listening to the technical director gushing about the history of suffering in front of him. Major Hoffman responded, observing the busy scene of people coming and going at the Volkswagen plant. From the open door of the workshop, you can see that the workers in each workshop are busy, and they are focusing on their own work in front of the assembly line. Just like the precision parts show the beauty of industry. This made Major Hoffman fascinated, especially in the assembly shop, watching the cars being driven out. He felt that this was the true meaning of industry. Point. Isn't it shocking? Yes, this is what real industrialization should look like. Point. After answering, Major Hoffman regained his senses, that he had lost his way. Seeing such a scene, I feel a little emotional. Point. Hearing Major Hoffman's words, Technical Director Tuslid replied with a sigh. It's normal, I was just like you when I first saw it. Point. They passed through the factory area and came to a 4-story building. Technical Director Tulai said, pointing to the building. This is our Volkswagen R/U0026D Center, but the new car is not here. There is a test field behind this building, and this new truck is tested in it. Point. Hearing Tulai's words, Major Hoffman wanted to see the new car first. Then let's go over and see this new car. Point. Certainly. Point. The two walked around the building and saw a huge test field with various terrains. On the side of the test field, there are also a large group of people holding the test equipment to observe the field. A truck with a front, 2, 4, and 6 wheels layout and a square front. Loaded with loads of cargo, the truck was cranking up a steep incline, and the blackish smell of smoke from the tailpipes showed that the car was doing its best. Point. It went up. Point. A technician exclaimed excitedly as the new test car climbed a steep incline. Point. It's amazing. I didn't expect this car to be able to climb such a steep slope with 6 tons of cargo. Point. It's all about the power of this car's 80 horsepower engine. We need to reward the people in the power group. Point. This also has the credit of the structural design team, so that this new car can exert such strength. Point. The one who said this was obviously a member of the power group. Point. At this time, Director Tuslid brought Major Hoffman to the group. Point. It's everyone's credit. After this test is successful, I will apply to the general manager Minoba for a large bonus. Everyone has a share. Only then can we repay our 4 years of hard work. Point. Director Tuslid walked up to the group of testers and began to commit. Point. No one was not interested in the prize money, and they all cheered loudly. Point. Satisfied with the performance of his subordinates, Director Tuslid turned to ask Major Hoffman, I wonder how you feel about this new car. It's exactly what I need. A big engine, a solid structure, and plenty of load. Point. Major Hoffman, after answering, asked, how much does this car weigh? 4.13 tons. A tester answered his question casually. Point. After hearing this answer, Hoffman calculated in his heart that, after reducing the carriage and unnecessary parts, he estimated that the weight would be 3.1 tons. He would need to add about 4 tons of armor and weapons, and then he would have reserved staff. There is still enough space. Thinking of this, Hoffman said to director Tuslid, "Just choose it. I need you to arrange for someone to help me." After hearing Major Hoffman's words, director Tuslid replied immediately, "No problem." Then he shouted to the group of testers, "Wang, Vikaya, Hulk, come here." With the shouting of director Tuslid, 3 people came out of the group of testers, and Major Hoffman saw a yellow man with yellow skin and dark eyes among the 3 people. A little curious, he asked the yellow man, "You are Japanese?" It's no wonder that Major Hoffman would ask this question. Now the most famous European for the yellow race is Japan, which has defeated Russia. Facing Major Hoffman's inquiries, Wang Cheoqiang did not take it for granted that he had experienced too many such inquiries. It was just that there was still a gloom in his eyes that was difficult for outsiders to detect. He spoke in fluent Romanian. "My name is Cheoqiang Wang. I'm Chinese, not Japanese." After hearing the Chinese, Major Hoffman said, a little embarrassed, "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were Chinese. I hope you don't mind my inquiry just now." It's okay. At this time, the other 2 resolved the embarrassment between them. "Hello, I'm Bakir." Hoffman shook the hand of the man named Bakir and replied, "Nice to meet you. I'm Major Hoffman. I'm Hulk. Hello, Mr. Hulk." After seeing that they all knew each other, director Tuslid said to the 3, "Major Hoffman needs the help of the 3 of you. He wants to build an armored vehicle based on our new car. I hope you can cooperate with him." Hearing that the major wants to build armored vehicles, the 3 are technicians, and Volkswagen will show them the latest European car intelligence collected, so that they can know the latest developments in European cars. Therefore, the 3 of them are no strangers to armored vehicles. After the 3 of them got the news, they all replied with a bright eye, "Sure, no problem." Especially Wang Cheoqiang. After the successful development of the new car, he had already made up his mind to return to China to develop and let the motherland have its own auto industry. But now the armored vehicle has made him decide to stay and wait until the development is completed before leaving. Seeing the eager expressions of the 3 of them, director Tuslid was still very satisfied. These 3 are now his more optimistic technicians. Especially the king, who has a strong learning ability, makes him very satisfied. Although there were rumors that Wang planned to return to China for development, he still gave him this opportunity, hoping to keep the smart and eager to learn technology and good seedlings. Then, at the request of Major Hoffman, the 3 began to bring ordinary workers to build an armored vehicle belonging to Romania, based on this new car. PS Mantau is guilty. I have made all book friends and gentlemen wait for a long time. I hope everyone will forgive me. Chapter 164 Romania 039 S Material Reserves. A bodyguard walked into Edel's office and spoke to the Crown Prince, who was engrossed in his work. "Your Highness, the Prime Minister has arrived." After hearing the guard's words, Edel raised his head and twisted his sore neck. "Please come in." Looking at the leaving guard, Edel took another look at the document he just picked up. Above is the price index of raw materials that Romania needs to purchase in recent years. With the increasingly tense situation in Europe in recent years, the prices of various raw materials are now more or less affected. As far as Romania imports a lot of rubber, this kind of tree species spread from the Brazilian rainforest to all over the world, and now Southeast Asia is its main producing area, and the sap it secretes is rubber that is widely used in industry. The price of rubber has now risen from a low of 2 shillings and 18 pence 3 years ago to 6 shillings and 3 pence now. Among them are the effects of increased industrial demand in the current tension in Europe. Your Highness, look for me. Prime Minister Bricianu walked in a dusty manner and asked before he could breathe. Now the Prime Minister's office still has a lot of things waiting for him to deal with, especially the personnel arrangement of the newly occupied areas, which is related to whether the territories captured by Romania can be quickly settled down. What about our new territory now? Ed routinely asked, after seeing Prime Minister Bricianu. Now the people of the Bulgarian government are encouraging the local people to move to their newly acquired territories. Prime Minister Bricianu answered Ed's question, but he still asked worriedly, "Your Highness, do we just let them encourage the people to leave?" "Yes, this can at least reduce the instability factor. Without these people, who love their homeland. The remaining local residents can at least keep their peace. In the face of Crown Prince Edil's answer, Prime Minister Bricianu still felt a little disadvantaged. Because now the Balkan countries are expelling each other's tribes, especially in Macedonia and Thrace. The local Bulgarian government drove about 200,000 Turks into its territory, and more than 100,000 Greeks were driven back to Greece. However, the Greek government is also unequivocal, and about 90,000 Bulgarians were also driven to Bulgaria by them. Now, several countries that have carved up the Ottoman Empire's territory in Europe are doing the same thing, driving the nations that do not belong to their own countries to their respective countries. This expulsion resulted in nearly 1 million people forcibly changing their nationalities, of which the Ottomans received the most, with about 500,000 natives being driven from Macedonia and Thrace to the Ottomans. In the face of a sudden large number of their own people, they were successively resettled by the Ottoman government to live in various parts of Asia Minor at present. The evictions in various countries only allow the expelled people to bring their own clothes, banknotes, precious metals and other easy to carry items. As for their houses, farmland and other items that cannot be carried, they are directly expropriated and processed, and all countries are expelled for a while. People can only give up their hard-earned family business and flee to their respective countries. The more than 100,000 Romanians living in Macedonia were not driven out, probably because Bulgaria was afraid of Romania's power. However, Prime Minister Bricianu has sent people to incite these local people to return to Romania. According to the Prime Minister's own estimate, there may be 50,000 to 60,000 people who can be instigated into Romania. I'm looking for you this time to find out how much money do we have. After Prime Minister Bricianu heard that the Crown Prince wanted to know about the government's financial situation, he secretly raised his vigilance, fearing that the Crown Prince would try to make plans for the government's finances again. However, the financial situation, Edel can also find out about the finance minister. He only informed the financial situation of the Crown Prince government, but he still made a foreshadowing point due to the high expenditures of the war. Now our Romanian government has only 20 million lei emergency funds available. Now we still need to face the domestic situation, and we need to wait until October, when the food tax comes up before the financial situation improves. Do we have any other way? Facing the Prime Minister's words, Edel also knew, but in the past 2 years Romania's fiscal revenue has been rising steadily, and there are not a few banks willing to lend money to Romania. It is obvious that Edel is playing this idea. Hearing the Crown Prince's undisguised inquiry, Prime Minister Bricianu had no choice but to tell the truth. If we need to borrow foreign debt now, several banks are willing to lend to us. In the short term we can probably borrow 100 million lei, and if we are willing to pay a little higher interest, then we can also borrow 200 million lei. Borrowed, but it all requires tax collateral. After hearing the words of Prime Minister Bricianu, Edel, combined with the royal family's own 110 million lei funds, can fully reserve the raw materials urgently needed by Romanian industry for 2 to 3 years. He calculated after excluding coal and iron ore, because both of them can be imported from the surrounding Austria-Hungary, Russia and Ottoman, and they have little impact on him. Thinking that 8 years ago, he could only tie up Germany for 300 million lei of industrial startup funds and reorganization of the army, and now Romania can borrow 200 million lei of funds at will. Edel side. Then let's borrow foreign debts according to the capital of 200 million. Hearing that Crown Prince Edel wanted to borrow 200 million foreign debts, Prime Minister Bricianu was shocked. In his image, the Crown Prince had borrowed so much money for the startup capital of Romania's industrialization only 8 years ago. Fortunately, Romania took advantage of its own advantages to develop aggressively, and with the completion of the military reorganization, it took 2 years of its own rule to relax. Now that he has to borrow foreign debts, what does His Royal Highness want to do? Looking at Prime Minister Bricianu with a question mark on his face, Edel had to tell him his plans. After all, without government support, Romania's raw material reserves cannot be made. Your Excellency Prime Minister, the situation in Europe is becoming more and more tense. Most of our imports are now going through the Ottoman Strait. I'm afraid that the situation will become like the Balkan War, and our imports will be interrupted. You must know that it will not be us in the Balkans The country is so simple to fight. It is estimated that it is the European war. Hearing the anxiety of the Crown Prince, Prime Minister Bricianu also thought of the scene at that time when he worked hard to transport Romania's export goods by land, but whether the 200 million lei funds were too much to prepare raw materials. It should be known that the raw materials that countries need to reserve for themselves are at most half a year. The funds of 200 million lei are almost enough for Romania to reserve raw materials for a year. He still does not know that Crown Prince Edel does not plan to reserve coal and iron ore due to insufficient funds. Or more surprising point is there too much money, and the amount borrowed is enough for our needs for a year. When the war comes together, none of us know how long it will last. It's not a bad thing for the reserve at all. Edel couldn't tell the Prime Minister that the war would take more than 4 years. Now it is generally believed in Europe that the war between the Allies and the Allies broke out. It is estimated that the war will last from June to a year, get extended. In the face of the Crown Prince's rhetoric, the Prime Minister is not easy to say anything. After all, no one can tell how long the fight will last. Well then I'll let the government start stockpiling the raw materials we desperately need. No need, I'm ready here. After Edel finished speaking, he took out a list from the drawer, which he had made privately with the Minister of Industry Caraccioli. Now that the nephew of the former Prime Minister Stulia has completely hugged Edel's thigh, it is of course a piece of cake for him to prepare the reserves of industrial raw materials in advance. Prime Minister Bricianu took over the list, which marked the various raw materials that Romania needs to import, such as copper ore, manganese ore, nitrate ore, rubber, etc., which are indispensable to Romanian industry. Most of which all 3 to 4 years of storage, but Prime Minister Bricianu found no reserves of coal and iron ore in this list. Even with these preliminary calculations, the raw materials on this list also require funds of 250 to 300 million lei, and the government borrowing 200 million lei is not enough. Seeing the Prime Minister's puzzled expression, Edel told his own way. The royal family can buy the 100 million lei foreign debt issued by the government to help the government buy these raw materials. After hearing the words of the Crown Prince, Prime Minister Bricianu asked with a little worry, "Can we use up so much?" "You can do as you are told. Even if we can't use it up, we can continue to use it after the war is over." Seeing that the Crown Prince decided everything strongly, Prime Minister Bricianu nodded his head secretly, holding back his displeasure. "Okay, I'll arrange for government departments to start purchasing." In the ensuing time, Romania borrowed heavily through banks in various countries, and then purchased all the various industrial raw materials it needed. No country can understand why the Romanian government did this. Thanks to Romania's aggressive purchases, various raw materials have grown a little bit. Chapter 165 New Territory 1. In the city of Varna, the largest port city in the former Bulgaria, Andicus, a government worker dispatched by Romania, was walking on the Brinth Street. This street was the most prosperous area before Varna. There are a large number of Bulgarian exporters who wholesale goods from all over this street, and traders who need Bulgarian goods can buy their favorite goods here. It's just that now the street is deserted, and there are fewer people on the street. In fact, after the start of the Second Balkan War, the merchants here left. After the signing of the Bucharest Treaty, most of the shops here are marked for sale. Now most of the Bulgarian traders are not coming back. They have moved to Burgas in the south and the port city of Thessaloniki in the Mediterranean, where they have better opportunities for development. While walking on the street, Andurkas saw a familiar face and came forward to say hello. "Hey, Borkov, how many residents have you recruited willing to return to Bulgaria?" This young man named Borkov, he looks delicate, with a pair of glasses more gentle, and wears a white shirt and a pair of black trousers, and has a sleeve with a Bulgarian badge on his arm. He is a local government worker in Bulgaria, responsible for instigating local residents to move to the newly occupied Bulgarian territory. As for why he met Andicus, a staff member of the Romanian government, it had to mention the law and order in Varna. "When I was under military control, the local security conditions were pretty good. Everyone knew that the military would not reason with you. Once it was found that you were committing a crime, it would definitely be dealt with strictly. It's just that after Romania dispatched government officials to manage, the army also withdrew to the barracks. In the face of these new officials who were unfamiliar with their lives, some phenomena that were previously suppressed by the army tended to emerge, and Borkov was such a victim. By point when he returned to his residence, he was robbed by a few gangsters, but fortunately he met Andurks. The final result was that Andurks found the nearby Romanian police, rescued Borkov, who was stripped of only his underwear, and got his clothes and finances back for him. Then the two started chatting, and the more they chatted, the more speculative they became, and they became a pair of good friends. He smiled and showed his white teeth when he saw Andurks greet him. The residents we were able to mobilize are almost all mobilized. Yesterday, only 20 families were willing to go to Macedonia. Borkov's words made Andurks ask curiously. So you're going to move to the next place to mobilize? Borkov continued to answer. Some people will be transferred to the next place, but some people will be left to continue mobilization, and the goal of mobilization will also be transferred. We plan to go to the countryside to try, but I was left to see if there were still any in Varna residents who can mobilize. This is great news, and I wish you all success in the face of Andurks' blessing, Borkov said with a sigh. Thank you. We wouldn't know if it wasn't for this damn war. But we lost so much, I don't know now whether to celebrate the war or curse it. Then let's not talk about the war. Let's talk about other things. Andurks continued to ask about the rumors he had heard. I heard you expel the Ottomans and Greeks in the south. In the face of Andurks' inquiry, Borkov whispered to him. According to our captain, it seems that, in order to make room for the Bulgarians we mobilized, we can only drive these Ottomans and Greeks. Hearing Borkov's words, Andurks couldn't tell him the news he got. In fact, Bulgaria had already driven out some 500,000 Ottomans and Greeks from Macedonia and Thrace, and it was more than a mistake to resettle the Bulgarians who agitated from this territory. The news I got is that the Bulgarian army is still driving the Ottomans and Greeks, making it difficult for him to tell his new friend about this situation. He knows that his friend has always believed in Bulgaria's rhetoric. If it weren't for him, after saving him, it is estimated that he will be more sensitive to his job as a Romanian government worker faced with this situation. Andurks had to leave first. Then you are busy first. My boss has something to do with me now. Let's talk another day. Borkov said that it was not easy to stop him when he saw that he had something to do. Goodbye, Andurks. Let's talk next time. Andurks moved on. He was actually the secretary of the mayor of the Varna region, Chaks, who came here with the arrangement of the government. When Chaks was the mayor of the Buzor region, he was his secretary. After Chaks was transferred to the Varna region, he was also transferred to continue to serve as the secretary. That's why he was able to know a lot of news that Borkov couldn't get in touch with, but he still knew that he couldn't spread the news himself. What he said to his friend was not a rhetoric. Chaks was indeed looking for him, just not so eagerly. After the signing of the Bucharest Treaty, the Romanian government appointed two mayors. One is the mayor of Chaks in Varna, whom he served, and the other is the mayor of the Suman region named Ploiesti. The Dobrij and Rus regions were split. Among them is the credit of Crown Prince Edel. In the previous life, a major country in the Middle East used this method to split up the regions of Tibet and Gansu where ethnic minorities were the majority, and allocated a small piece of it to other provinces, or simply divided it into several identity, so that the other ethnic groups occupying a major position in it do not have such a large size, which reduces many unnecessary troubles. Edel can be regarded as a current student and a seller. He divided the northern part of the Rus region into the territory of Guraju, which is a river, so that this county with a large population in Romania can digest these Bulgarians. The two cities of Ligiu and Rus merged, allowing the two cities across the Danube to merge and develop together, and then assigned its eastern part to Clarahi County. A small part to the southwest was incorporated into the Suman area. As for the smallest area of Dobrij, except for a limited number of villages that are easy to manage and are assigned to the Varna area, all others are assigned to the Constanta area. After such a division, only Varna and Suman are in the majority of the local Bulgarian people. It is believed that with the migration of Romanian population from the country, these two areas will be easily digested by Romania. Andurks came to the city hall. The previous Bulgarian municipal building was destroyed by the Romanian army and could not be used. The building they are using now belonged to a patriotic Bulgarian businessman, but with the fall of Varna, he was also buried in the ruins, so it was naturally confiscated by Romania. It was used as the headquarters of the garrison before, and was used as a temporary office by them after the military control ended, until the new city hall is built, but the new city hall building is built on the ruined Bulgarian city hall. I don't know what they really think. Seeing the arrival of Andurkas, a staff member who had been waiting for him at the gate for a long time stepped forward and said anxiously to him, "Lord Mayor asked you to go to his office immediately. PS Mantou will go on a blind date tomorrow. I hope it will be successful. As for the update issue, it will be updated if time comes. If it is too late, I hope everyone will forgive Mantou." Chapter 166 New Territory, Part 2. After hearing the words of the staff member named Miller, Andurks hurried his steps, but he did not forget to ask, "Do you know what Mayor Chax is looking for from me?" "I don't know, but it seems to be urgent." Hearing Miller's nonsense, Andrex walked quickly to the mayor's office on the right side of the third floor. Come in. With Andurkas knocking on the door, a familiar voice pushed him in. When Andrex entered, he saw Mayor Chax sitting behind his desk, signing his name on a document. Chax is of medium stature, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, and a face with a Chinese character. Just looking at him has an air of self-confidence. Mayor, are you looking for me? As soon as Andurks entered the door, he whispered to Mayor Chax. Yes. Mayor Chax put down the pen in his hand, stood up and moved his sore neck, and told Andrex, "You know Ponakov." Of course Andrekas knew about Ponakov. He knew it the day he arrived in the port city of Varna. Ponakov's full name is Nitsek Sherva Ponakov. He was born into an ordinary family in Varna, and his father made a living by running his own small grocery store. His father has a very modern consciousness and knows that, no matter how hard he is, he can't suffer a child, so he sent him to study early. Ponakov lived up to his father's expectations, doing well in school and building his business experience after school by helping out at the family's grocery store. Of course, the greatest help to him was when he married the daughter of a big local businessman at the age of 21. This marriage allowed him to get 50,000 livres of development funds from his father-in-law. Then he relied on Varna, the largest port in Bulgaria, as a trader, selling various Bulgarian commodities to businessmen in other countries. With good reputation, and he became the largest exporter in Varna due to his reputation, and then he invested heavily in factories to produce various commodities needed in Bulgaria, and made a lot of money. There are nearly 1,000 people working in his factory all year round, and they are all very famous people in Bulgaria. Who else in Varna doesn't know about him? There are people from the Bulgarian government in his house at all times, who are lobbying him to move to Thessaloniki, and I heard he has agreed. In the face of the famous Ponakov, Andurks of course knew it, and he also said what he knew. Mayor Chax was very satisfied with the secretary's performance. He took out a cigar and took a puff. Now there's something new. What's the situation? Now he is reluctant to move out, saying that he is unwilling to leave the place where he was born. As the secretary of the mayor of Chax, Andurkas still knows some things by virtue of the advantage of being close to the water and the platform. You must know that this Ponakov is not so clean. Every businessman who is doing big business in this era is not kind generation. He knew that there were only 3 or 4 murders involving this Ponakov. I don't believe the excuse of not wanting to move out of the place of birth at all. I guess it's almost the same as being unwilling to give up the property in Varna. Then do we need to do something? As the secretary of the mayor for many years, Andurkas still knows his habits, and it is estimated that he needs to do something to let the big businessman know that Romania does not need him now. Now the Romanian government intends to expel Bulgaria's power in this new territory for the convenience of its own digestion. And Ponakov, the largest industrialist in Varna, is on their expulsion list. However, in order to reduce the dissatisfaction from the local civilians, it is not easy for Romania to do some radical things in this new territory, to cause ethnic antagonism in the new territory. Therefore, Romania has always cooperated with the Bulgarian government's personnel who stayed in the local area as much as possible to let them move out. Facing his secretary, Mayor Chax did not play dumb. Yes, I'm going to ask you to give this Mr. Panov a hint that we don't want him to stay in Varna. Give it to me. Andkas knew what to do, and he learned a lot from following Mayor Chaks for several years, and he still knew how to do it. When it came to hints, there is a 5,000 square meter manor on Nebek Street in Varna. This is the home of Ponakov, that the mayor of Chaks and Secretary Andrux talked about before. In this very baroque building, Ponakov has just sent away representatives of the Bulgarian government. He sat tiredly on the sofa, thinking about his family's future choices. After he revealed his intention to stay, the Bulgarian government kept sending people over to discuss with him. The general meaning is to hope that he can sell his property in Varna and move to the newly occupied Macedonia region of Bulgaria for development, and it will also give him good convenience in terms of policy. However, he is still a little unwilling. The main problem is that his property in Varna cannot be sold at a good price, and it can even be said that it is sold at a low price. Take his most lucrative textile factory as an example. He spent 1.16 million leva for this factory. The Romanians are only willing to bid 700,000 leva. This machine is not good, and the equipment is outdated. You must know that this is a new factory that he has only built in less than 2 years, and he has to divide it into 6 months and 3 times to get the money. This is also where he feels most helpless. Now, not only in Varna, but also in the newly occupied territory of Romania, the price is amazing. And the price that comes to negotiate and buy is amazingly consistent, giving him a headache. Father, otherwise we wouldn't sell our own business. His 21-year-old son Sadov walked into the office and saw Ponakov's grey face and said angrily. Seeing his son's attitude, Ponakov also secretly hurt himself because he was too young and lacked social training experience. As an old fritter, Ponakov knew through the quotations of those Romanians that they were bound to win their industry in Varna, otherwise they would not have been so insistent on this price issue, which must have their confidence. Then the attitude of the Varna government will be their support. We are looking. Facing his son, Ponakov still said with a tired face. Seeing that his father was still planning to wait, Soldorf showed the impetuousness of a young man. Father, it's not a solution. Now the new Romanian government has made it clear that it wants to drive us out, otherwise we will start the workers to take to the streets to make a big fuss. If they don't make us feel better, then we don't already. Seeing his son's bad idea, Ponavov didn't know what to say, and he probably won't be able to get a penny at any time. Now I can get back more than half of my property. Ponavov, who was about to scold his son, heard the butler's voice at the door. There's a government official called Andurkas asking for an interview. Ponakov swallowed what he was about to say, and he still knew about the secretary of the mayor of Chaks. He said to the housekeeper through the door, "Let him wait a moment, I'll be out right away." After he finished speaking to the housekeeper, he sorted out his appearance and told his son, "Okay Soldorf, let go of your stupid idea and I'll go see what the Romanians have to say to me." After speaking, he walked out of the office, looking at his father who was dismissive of his own ideas. Soldorf didn't know where he was wrong. "Hello Mr. Andurkas, I don't know if you need to use me this time." Ponavov walked to the living room and asked with a smile on his face as soon as he saw Andurkas in the face of Ponakov's favor. Andurks knew that it was not for himself, but because of the mayor of Chaks behind him, but it didn't affect his mood. I saw him say with a smile, "There is something that needs Mr. Ponakov's support." It was just a polite remark, but Ponakov was a little puzzled when he heard that the mayor's secretary really had something to use him in front of him. You must know that in the face of Bulgarian all kinds of solicitations, the Romanian side has always been indifferent to them Bulgarians. He ignored it, and he probably knew the reason why. Facing this sudden news, Ponavov still asked with a smile, "I don't know what would make Mr. Andurkas take a trip in person." In the face of Ponakov's question, Andurks talked about running the train with his mouth full. Now the number of workers is increasing in various places, and various union disputes occur from time to time. Among them, the United States has implemented an 8-hour working day. In Europe, our Romanian government intends to take the lead in implementing this initiative to reduce the occurrence of disputes. This time, we plan to start in Varna. Let's try it with Ruse first to see how it works, so I hope Mr. Ponakov will support our work. After hearing Andurkas's words, Ponikov smile gradually disappeared. If the person in front of him didn't represent the Romanian government, if someone else dared to say this in front of him, he would be thrown into the sea to feed the fish. You must know that in Europe, 10-hour working hours are common, and 10-hour working hours in the Balkans are considered conscientious entrepreneurs. And everywhere in the Balkans there are 11 to 12-hour work hours, even 14 hours. Ponikov also followed the trend, pushing it for 12 hours at the factory point. Ponikov looked at Andrks in front of him and asked with a serious face, "Mr. Andrks, you're not joking?" Absolutely not. Our government is already discussing options now. Andrks continued to run the train, and he was not afraid of him going to the government to confirm that, if it really failed, the mayor of Chaks could still transfer him back to the country. Ponikov said with a serious look and a cold tone, "Okay, I get it." After speaking, he turned away and left without any scruples about his feelings. Andrks was not angry about this and left Ponikov's house on his own. Then Varna's largest industrialist Ponikov announced that he would move his family to Thessaloniki and sell his entire property in Varna. Under his leadership, other Bulgarian businessmen who were still hesitant to sell their properties and relocate to Bulgaria. The Romanian side also accepts the industries left by these people at a low price point. According to post-mortem statistics, during these 3 months, Bulgarian businessmen sold assets worth 74.2 million lei on the territory ceded to Romania. Most of them are real estate such as factories, equipment, and houses that cannot be taken away, and the Romanian side only spent half of the funds to buy these assets. Although it is impossible to compare with other Balkan countries, it is also an aspect of Romania's planned clearing of new territories for local Bulgarian merchants to provide Romania's domestic capital. PS Mantau didn't write for a few days, which made everyone worried. I should have written it yesterday, but because I didn't write for a few days, my hand was stuck. Then Mantau looked at other sources for inspiration. I'm sorry, book friends. Chapter 167 Preparation for Kazangold. 1. In the face of what happened in the new territory, Edel did not know everything, and this strategy basically came from his hands. Now facing the increasingly intense atmosphere of war, he just wants to make Romania, a small Balkan country, ready in advance, as soon as possible. This news is really surprising. Edel took the information he had just obtained, and spoke to the captain of the bodyguard. Karist. Karist also said in disbelief, "Yes, your highness, I didn't expect that the United Kingdom would propose a navy holiday proposal to suspend the construction of warships for 1 year. And this proposal was proposed by the British Secretary of the Navy. This is really surprising, isn't it?" In fact, it is not only Karist who thinks this way. Most people in Europe now have the image of Britain that was in full swing in the Victorian era. In fact, most people were blinded by the glorious image of Britain before, which can be seen from its shipbuilding plan for the 1913 fiscal year. From fiscal year 1913 onwards, the Royal Navy made plans for the construction of 8 Vengeance-class Super dreadnoughts, 5 actually built, 2 converted to battle cruisers, and 1 cancelled. However, compared with its predecessor, the Queen Elizabeth-class battleship, the Vengeance-class battleship has a considerable backwardness in technology. The full load displacement has dropped by 500 tons, the speed has dropped to 23 knots, and the endurance has dropped from 8,600 nautical miles to 4,200 nautical miles. Obviously, this not only reduces the cost, but also meets the requirements of the Royal Navy to fight the German Navy in the North Sea. And Edel vaguely remembers that in World War I, Britain concentrated all its main dreadnoughts on the mainland to deal with the German Navy. Then the Mediterranean Sea should have been jointly taken over by the French and Italian navies. In fact, the Allies lacking the Italian Navy had absolutely no room to play in the Mediterranean Sea. The combined strength of the 4 ships of Austria-Hungary is not enough for the French family to fight, not to mention the addition of Italy. The allied countries that have mastered the ocean are actually invincible. The 4-year-old World War I can rely on Germany's powerful army, which is why Edel is reluctant to join. Regarding the results of the original time and space Romania's participation in the war in 1916, the Crown Prince now believes that 1918 is actually a good time to seize the best interests for Romania. Austria-Hungary was dying. Its Tsarist Russia had been overthrown, and Red Russia had signed the Treaty of Brest to withdraw from World War I, and was busy with the Civil War. The two countries that threatened Romania the most for a while have collapsed, and Romania can take advantage of this time period to snatch the heritage of these two countries, and then concentrate on dealing with the power from the Red point. Thinking of this, Edel suddenly remembered a piece of news that has spread widely in later generations. That is Kolchak gold. Kolchak was born into a noble family in St. Petersburg. He graduated from the St. Petersburg Naval School in 1894 and participated in battles at Port Arthur during the Russo-Japanese War. In 1916 he was appointed commander of the Black Sea Fleet, promoted to admiral in 1917. In 1918, he served as the Minister of the Army and Navy of the Siberian government, and then launched a coup with the support of foreign armed forces, established a military dictatorship, and proclaimed himself the supreme ruler of Russia and the supreme commander of the Russian Army and Navy armed forces. Then he became the commander-in-chief of the White Guards when the Allies first intervened in Soviet Russia, and once occupied Siberia, the Urals and the Volga River. Captured after being defeated by the Red Army in late 1919, executed in Irkutsk in 1920, now seems to be the captain of the mine team in the Baltic Sea. As for the about 600 tons of gold he owned in the original time and space, it came from the Russian Reserve Bank in Kazan. Because of the brave performance of the German army in World War I, Tsar Nicholas II ordered most of Russia's gold reserves to be transferred to Kazan, located in the middle of the Volga River. It has always been the rear of Russia, with convenient transportation and rich products nearby. Kolchak found the gold from the Reserve Bank after he captured Kazan in 1918, and he transferred the gold to his Siberian capital, Omsk. As for some people in the original time and space who said that the gold was transferred here by the Soviet government, Edel has always sneered. Nearly 600 tons of gold, if the Soviet government really knew, could have been transported by a train within half a day. Where would it be left to Kolchak? This is gold hard currency worth more than 80 million pounds now, and it is completely possible to build a new German high seas fleet. Thinking of the financial difficulties of the Soviet Russian government in the early stage, it is completely unknown. Thinking of this batch of gold now worth more than 80 million pounds, Edel thinks he should do something about it. However, considering that the place where gold is usually stored is closely guarded, then you need to prepare in advance. Thinking of this, Edel couldn't sit still. This is Romania's financial income for 4 years now. If you can put this money into Romania, you can do a lot of things. Callist, go and call Milik over. I need him to do something. Okay, Your Highness, hearing that the Crown Prince got the British proposal to stop the 1-year naval holiday, and suddenly asked for the intelligence chief Milik. He did not think much, and immediately agreed. I didn't know that Edel's thinking would spread so fast, and I thought about the Russian Civil War. While Edel waited patiently, Milik, who looked ordinary and unattractive at all, was sitting in his office thinking about his future. Although the sun is shining outside, it still looks dark in his office. Because of the thick curtains, he has done a lot of things for the old king, and knows too much that he did not retire. He could only work in this position until he died of old age. Now the Crown Prince rarely uses them, and usually asks his chief guard to do it. This makes Milik deeply worried. If you know that an intelligence department is not used, then it will not be too far away from disbanding. Others estimate that they will change departments at most, and no one knows what will happen to them in the end. When Milik was thinking about his way out, a subordinate walked in and said softly, "Head, the man named Karist is here. He said that the Crown Prince summoned you. Due to Edel's relationship, the royal family now has 2 intelligence departments, and most of the party led by Milik is not used by the Crown Prince, so the relationship between the 2 intelligence agencies is known from the tone of Milik's subordinates. Although he was worried about his future, Milik would not show it in front of his subordinates. He said in a flat tone without a trace of emotion, "Please come in. PS Some people actually don't keep up with the new, because I haven't updated, and I'm in a low mood. This excuse is terrible. I strongly despise those authors who don't update." Chapter 168 Preparation for Kazan Gold, Part 2. Hello, Director Milik. As soon as Karist came in, he greeted Milik, who was sitting in the dark place. He was also well aware of the poor relationship between the two intelligence agencies. This was all for Crown Prince Edel to master it smoothly. Only after power can they ease. Before that, the relationship between the two intelligence agencies could be maintained as it is now. Milik looked at the confidant of the Crown Prince in front of him and still asked in his emotionless tone. Captain Karst, I heard that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince called me, Karst said succinctly. Yes. Milik stood up and walked towards a room on the side. He explained to the captain of the guard. I'm going to change clothes and come out. After all, I can't be too rude to meet His Highness, the captain of the guard said with a smile. Okay, I'll wait for you. After Milik changed his clothes, he came to Edel's office with the captain of the guard. Karst. Milik, I need you to unwittingly transport 600 tons of cargo from Kazan, Russia. How do you think it will be done? Seeing that Karst brought in the most intelligence-minded person in Romania, Edel immediately threw out his request. After Milik heard the Crown Prince's request, the whole person immediately fell into thought. Of course, he is no stranger to the situation in Russia. Before, because of Romania's national defense and security issues, he has always attached great importance to Russian intelligence. At first glance, this country seems to be easy to infiltrate. This is just an illusion. In fact, Russia is no better than other powers. To obtain intelligence. In the face of the Crown Prince's request to smuggle 600 tons of goods, he is quite difficult to answer. This is not to bring a few people out, and it is not so noticeable. In the case of 600 tons of goods, you need at least a train or a freighter. It is difficult for people to notice such a big movement. Seeing that Milik did not answer, Edel immediately realized that he had not given time. It is estimated that Milik in front of him thought he was going to be transported immediately and continued to talk about the issue of time. It will take about 4 or 5 years for me to transport these goods. Hearing that Crown Prince Edel said that it would take 4 or 5 years, Milik secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Even if he came up with a plan now, it would be impossible for him. After all, there are 600 tons of goods, and now this situation is definitely not possible. His Royal Highness, I need to go back and prepare a plan. Hearing Milik's answer, Edel felt that it was better to have insurance. Nearly 600 tons of gold, which can make people do anything. Wealth requires cooperation and supervision from many parties. Milik prepared a plan earlier this time. You and Karst can do it together. I only have one request. Mobilize the best people in your hands and prepare the most reasonable plan. Hearing that the Crown Prince wanted the two to cooperate, Milik and Karst immediately thought of the previous rubber crisis when they had also cooperated. However, it is mainly Karst, and Milik's people are only less involved. Is this the case again this time? The idea immediately emerged in the minds of the two. Seeing the expressions of the two, Edel felt that it was better to let them pay more attention. This operation can only succeed and not fail. Do you understand? Looking at the Crown Prince with a serious expression, Milik and Karst couldn't help but be stunned. It was because the Crown Prince said such a decisive word for the first time that Karst realized that the situation this time was more important than the rubber crisis. Milik is because in intelligence work, this situation shows that the situation is very serious, so that he, a professional who specializes in intelligence work, can't help showing his emotions. At the same time, he also notes that the impact of this incident on him in the future is definitely not small, and it seems that he has to show all his abilities to let the Crown Prince see his ability. Edel, who looked at the two with serious expressions, is now very satisfied with the effect of his words. A wealth of more than £80 million can ensure that Romania is well funded for several years. At that time, buying equipment and technology from the defeated Austria-Hungary and Germany at the price of Chinese cabbage can completely make Romania a newly promoted power in Europe. Therefore, this batch of gold Edel is determined to win, and he must not let it slip away from his eyes. After sending Milik and Karst away, Edel felt that he had no intention of working now, and his mind was full of gold in the Kazan Reserve Bank. Thinking of this, Edel walked out of his office and asked a guard casually, "Where is my wife Sophie Mary now?" The guard who was questioned by Edel said what he knew. Because the weather is too hot, Her Royal Highness is taking a lunch break in the bedroom. Understood. Edel replied casually and strode to his bedroom. Now he needs his wife's comfort. A few days later, in his office, Edel met the captain of the guard Karist and the intelligence chief Milok. Both of them had dark circles under their eyes, and it was obvious that neither of them had a good rest, but they were both very excited mentally. His Royal Highness, this is our plan. Milok took out a whole book thick document and placed it in front of Edel. Looking at such a thick preparation plan, Edel knew the hard work of the two. In fact, they worked really hard. After getting the request of the Crown Prince, the two recruited the most authoritative experts on Russian issues in Romania, as well as Russian domestic intelligence from other places. The experienced action planner took 6 days to complete the plan. During this period, their hard work was not enough to talk about to outsiders. They stayed in the office every day to discuss and improve this preparation plan. In fact, this was the best preparation plan that the two of them came up with. Looking at the preparation plan that thickened into a book in front of him, Edel told the two of them, "It's better for you to tell me. After all, you are professionals." Hearing the words of the Crown Prince, Milok, who was mainly responsible for formulating the plan this time, came out and told Edel, "Your Highness, let me explain to you. Then please start." After obtaining the consent of the Crown Prince, Milok took out a precise map of Russia from his pocket, spread it out in front of Edel, and pointed to the location of Kazan to preach. "This time, we have prepared a large number of people to sneak into Russia first. Among them, within the target of Kazan, we have prepared 11 groups of people to sneak in. They will enter Kazan as engineers, businessmen, students, etc., as the action team, provide target investigation, and the most important transportation work. A total of 19 people. We have also arranged manpower to lurk in Tsaritsyn, Rostov, Astrakhan, Yekaterinburg and other places, and we have prepared 5 retreat routes, which are to deal with the Black Sea route to Kazan, Tsaritsyn, and Rostov, which is also the latest and best solution, in which we rely on the Volga and on rivers to transport our goods." After hearing Milok's words, Edel said with satisfaction, "Okay, keep talking." We still have a plan for the mountain, Tsaritsyn, and Astrakhan, which is to go down the Volga and enter the Black Sea, and then take the Caucasus, Baku, Tbilisi, and Pakistan Unified Line to return to Romania. If the Caucasus goes, if it doesn't work, we can still go to Persia and return to Romania, which is also our most flexible plan. Continue. Then there is the Kazan, Moscow, Riga line, the Baltic line and the boat back. It is not much different from the Kazan, Moscow, Kyiv line that uses the train to return to Romania. However, these two plans are backup. In the previous plan, it will only be considered when it cannot be used. The main reason is that the railway is used for too much time, and it is easy to be detected and intercepted. The last plan is the Trans-Siberian Railway plan of Kazan, Yekaterinburg, Emsk, and Vladivostok. This is an emergency plan that will only be activated when several plans cannot be completed. We are ready to arrange all the above mentioned locations. The manpower is lurking in advance, ready to provide support for the transportation work. After hearing Milok finish speaking, Edel felt that it was not bad, and he couldn't pick out any faults from these plans. Just follow this preparation plan. Then the two began to recruit their best people to start preparing staff. In a tavern in Constanta, the friendly looking owner and clerk is pouring drinks for his guests. He has been running a tavern here for 2 or 3 years, and everyone who often drinks here knows him. At this time, a man wearing a hat covering most of his face walked in. Need some wine. The good-natured fat man stepped forward to ask the new guest. Bring me a glass of whiskey, and remember to add ice. Then he sat in an unobtrusive corner of the tavern. Your whiskey on ice. The boss quickly put the wine in front of this guest. Galia, I want you to go back, and I have something for you to do this time. The new guest made his request in a voice that only he and the tavern owner could hear. After the tavern owner with Mayan Shan put down his drink, he continued to get busy, as if he didn't hear it. The whiskey customer left the tavern soon. It was only the next day that a notice was posted at the entrance of the tavern, and the tavern had been transferred. In a small grain processing factory in Buzor, Fredericia was alone trying to repair the damaged machinery in front of him. He has been learning how to be a better intelligence officer in the past few years, since he started the business of foreign rubber speculation. Occasionally, he was sent on a mission, and he was able to complete the mission well. Make Karist feel like he has picked up a treasure, and now is the time to use him. His partner, Jomius, walked up to him and spoke to him. Frederici, now there's a mission. Fredericia put down the till in his hand and looked at the partner who appeared in front of him. This Jomius had been working with him for 2 years, and he felt pretty good. Wait for a moment, I'll wash my hands. Jomius made a gesture of indulgence to him, then looked at the processing factory in front of him and said, Frederici, your factory is not bad. I heard that this business is very profitable now. Fredericia, who was washing his hands inside, said without looking back, if you don't use the money to spend the money, you should be able to build a small factory like me. If I didn't say it, no one in my family is nagging like you. Because of his relationship with Fredericia, his father was released early, but no one wanted to hire a man with a government account, so he took the money he got and opened a small processing factory in his hometown. The work is usually done by the parents and 2 relatives who are hired, and life is decent. The 2 partners who had worked together before the rubber crisis, Basayaku and Dunska, were rarely able to meet because of their work, and usually only contacted by Litomilak and Kalist. Each summoned their best subordinates and prepared to make their best efforts in this impossible task. Afterwards, the 2 integrated their respective personnel and assigned locations. Afterwards, these Romanian elite intelligence personnel entered Russia from various ports and border cities one after another. They all worked hard to integrate themselves in various identities in the cities where they needed to hide, and waited for Romania to need them before they burst out their energy. PS faced with my own publishing fee before, Mantow has considered whether to cut down the plot and reduce the number of words. The main reason is that there is a big gap between the manuscript fee for the first month and my expectations, which makes me a little discouraged. Now that the steamed buns have recovered, they will be updated every day and will not disappoint everyone. Chapter 169 Heavy truck is cold. While Edel was worried about the Kazan Gold, the 5-ton heavy-duty truck he asked Volkswagen to develop was already mass-produced in Constanta. Minoba, the general manager of Volkswagen, had actually reported it to him, but Edel's preparation plan for Milik and Karist at that time was left to Minoba to handle. This disappointed Minoba, who rushed over to report the good news. He thought that the Crown Prince was not satisfied with him and planned to find someone to replace him, which made him worry for several days. In mid-October 2013, after half a month of emergency production, the first batch of 1,005-ton heavy-duty trucks appeared in front of the world. These 5-ton trucks can be said to be earth-shaking changes to the previous 1.5-ton trucks. The most changed is that the chassis of the vehicle has been strengthened and optimized. Among them, the clutch, transmission and transaxle are the most changed. Among them, in order to solve the situation that the car is driving on complex roads, the Volkswagen R/U0026D department has also developed a differential. This can solve the difficulty of turning and the unequal rotation of the coaxial wheels caused by driving on complex roads. At the same time, it also reduces the friction between the tire and the ground and prolongs the life of the tire. Now all new Volkswagen cars are equipped with this component invented by the Technology Research and Development Department. It can be said that it is a small step to push the auto industry forward, and I believe that other car companies will soon learn from the Volkswagen method. In the original time and space, the differential was invented by Louis Renault in 1937, and now it has been advanced by Volkswagen by more than 20 years, which can prove that many technologies will not stick to the rules in the great development of automobiles triggered by the advance. Only then did it appear. Of course, Volkswagen's newly launched 5-ton Dongfeng truck is not as popular as the previous 1.5-ton truck. This batch of 1,000 new heavy trucks was sold out 11 days after it was put into the market, which disappointed the executives of Volkswagen who were waiting for news. In fact, this situation is caused by the fact that the price of this heavy truck is more expensive to £550 per vehicle, which is much more expensive than the £145 of the still selling 1.5-ton Dongfeng truck. Even 3 times the volume is still too expensive for many transport owners. On the other hand, the road conditions in Europe are not very good now. Only a small number of roads can run cars, not to mention the 5-ton heavy trucks that are fully loaded and heavier. And most goods can now be transported by 1.5-ton trucks, making 5-ton trucks a bit premature, except for the need to transport bulky items. However, despite being snubbed among the people, the military of various countries are very interested in this car. Among them, the German Chief of General Staff, General Moltke, told the people around him, after seeing the heavy truck, "This is a vehicle specially prepared for the transport of the army, and we should procure this vehicle with all Romanian repayments, which can improve the logistics of our army." In fact, he did the same. After observing the new Dongfeng truck with a load of 5 tons, he found the Ministry of War on the issue of equipment and its acquisition, and asked to purchase this vehicle to enhance the logistics and transportation level of the German army. A group of old Prussian conservatives have managed technical and logistical affairs in the War Department since 1866. Research into the future role of military aircraft, as well as the full utilization of automobiles and their conversion into armored vehicles, or their use as offensive weapons or reconnaissance vehicles when equipped with machine guns or small artillery guns, has either been delayed or not on the agenda at all. They seem to be saying that the Prussian infantry in 1870 wasn't armed with captive balloons and machine guns. Didn't they win? However, under the circumstance that Zhao Maoki insisted and even threatened to bypass them and go directly to Kaiser Wilhelm II. In the end, both sides decided to purchase 600 new heavy trucks to form a transportation group to see the effect. 0. Maoki was very dissatisfied with this, thinking that these old antiques of the War Department should be rolled down from their posts. These people have long been behind the times and still hold on to the experience of the Franco-Prussian War compared with the experience of Germany. The French army, its main army rival, was no better. Its commander-in-chief, General Zayafei, prefers the 1.5-ton Dongfeng truck, which, in his words, helps the French army to recruit drivers from the country, completely disregarding the fact that the driving operation of 5-ton heavy trucks and 1.5-ton trucks is not very different. So the French army plans to purchase 350 of these heavy trucks to implement its military transportation system. As for Russia, due to the complicated road conditions of its Eastern European roads, there are not too many 1.5-ton trucks now. Most of the road transportation is still based on power storage, so they only plan to buy 100 vehicles to test the effect. The British side is a lot more generous, but the reason for the purchase is a bit strange. They plan to form a division-level fast mobile unit to deal with possible wars in Europe. Originally planned to use 1.5-ton trucks as their means of transport, but after seeing the new 5-ton heavy trucks, they planned to purchase 800 such trucks, so that all soldiers and equipment could be taken away on 4 wheels. Just don't know how much a division can play in Europe. Austria-Hungary and Italy also purchased a small amount of vehicles to test the effects due to military funding. Other small countries also purchased dozens of vehicles, and I bought a few more. In the end, after these orders were aggregated, there were still orders of 3,000 or 4,000 vehicles. The higher-ups also breathed a sigh of relief. They've spent close to £1 million on this new car, and it'd be a joke if they didn't make it back. As for the United States, which is now the largest consumer of automobiles, Volkswagen has no other ideas at all. Once there was an agreement with Ford, it is still profitable for both parties to comply with it, so both parties recognize the current situation. And Volkswagen makes no less money from the Model T than Ford, because in Europe, the Model T is sold by Volkswagen more than the US by a price gap of $5. So in order not to break the relationship between the two parties, this does not seem to be a success. The new model can only abandon the US market. Even so, Volkswagen's general manager, Manoba, felt compelled to report the situation to the Crown Prince, not looking for a reason, just to let His Highness know that the new car Volkswagen he requested has been made, and the market response is not good. I hope His Highness can give less guidance on the development of Volkswagen. However, his painstaking efforts were not accepted by Edel. When the Crown Prince met him, he recognized their work and thought this was the car he needed. For Minoba's suggestion, that he wanted to slow down the construction of a new 5-ton heavy truck production line. The Crown Prince rejected it and asked him to build the 2 production lines as scheduled, because there will be orders at that time point in this regard. Minobu can only obey orders, but he does not know where the new orders will be produced by Volkswagen after completing these orders. In this regard, he plans to let the existing production line of 5-ton heavy trucks produce at the usual speed. As for the order, we will wait for it. Anyway, Volkswagen has a lot of experience with too many orders. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170, The New Armored Vehicle. When the top management of Volkswagen was a little disappointed because of the coldness of the 5-ton heavy truck in the market, there were still people working on the improvement of the 5-ton heavy truck in the R/U0026D department of Volkswagen. Wang, do I think it would be too weird to build like this? Looking at the blueprint given by Major Huffman in his hand, Bakaya compared a strange looking car that was almost built in front of him and asked Wang Cheoqiang, who was still checking car parts. No wonder he has such a problem. The armored vehicle in front of him, full of lidding punk style, is completely different from the one on the drawing. They can be called 2 models. The armored car is 6.1 meters long, 2.85 meters wide and 2.65 meters high. On the front, armor is a 65-degree sloped armor with 16mm armor on the upper slope and 15mm on the lower slope. The side upright armor is also 12mm. The tail armor is only 9mm. The turret is wide and narrow and the hull has a slight slope of 80 degrees. The front is 16mm armor. The side and rear of the turret are 14mm armor. All armor is loading articulate .27.92 caliber Maxim heavy machine guns are installed on the turret. A firing port is opened on the left side of the front of the car body, and a Maxim heavy machine gun is installed. The entire armored car is equipped with 3 Maxim machine guns, which are not bad in terms of firepower. The power of the armored vehicle is the same 80 horsepower engine as the 5-ton heavy truck, which can ensure that the 8.1-ton armored vehicle travels at a speed of 45 km per hour. However, because its prototype is a truck, it can only be used in plains and cities with uncomplicated terrain. Helk, who was checking the parts like Wang Cheoqiang to see if there was still a problem, said to him with sweat on his face, "This is the only way to ensure that the armor of the vehicle will not fall off. We have not tried welded steel plates before that cannot withstand machine gun fire." Before Hoffman used the drawings given by the Crown Prince to reconcile, he took a sketch to combine the body of the American M8 armored vehicle with the turret of the Type 92 and handed it over to the 3 of them and asked them to do it according to this requirement. The 3 people used the chassis of the 5-ton heavy truck to shorten the length of the frame and quickly built one. Because there was no LIUding on the drawings, the 3 chose the method of welding armor plates to build this test vehicle. In the fire attack test some time ago, the armored test vehicle faced the continuous fire of the Maxim heavy machine gun, and the welded front armor plate fell off directly, so the 3 had to change this method and can only use the safest. The way is to go to LIUding. And Huffman, of course, supported the 3 automotive experts in order to qualify the armored vehicle. Soon the test vehicle was removed from the welded armor plate and reordered liuding. Now that Edel is here in person, it is impossible to see that this is an armored vehicle produced by relying on his own sketches. In fact, the welding technology is not too reliable at present, and there is still room for development in the civilian field, but it is still a little powerless for welding military equipment. In fact, it was not until the emergence of automatic welding, a major breakthrough in welding technology in the 1920s, that the welding of armored vehicles became the mainstream of the military. Wang Cheoqiang couldn't help complaining to him when he saw Bakaya, who was still comparing the vehicles with the drawings. "Bakaya, stop talking, come and check the vehicle. If there is a problem during the experiment, the 3 of us will not have a good time. I'll come down and check the car right now." Seeing that he caused dissatisfaction among his colleagues, Bayak put down the drawings and joined the inspection team, but he still kept talking. 1. When are you going to cook Chinese food next time? I kind of miss the taste of it. Wang Cheoqiang couldn't help but fight back. The next time I cook is after your death, to celebrate our ears being clean. This is a good idea. Wang Cheoqiang's words were approved by Hulk, but obviously he was also aroused by the Kai's words. But we haven't tasted your craft in a while. Looking at the appearance of the two colleagues in front of him, Wang Cheoqiang didn't think of when he came. At that time, because I was tired of eating European food, he made braised eel, a variation of his hometown dish braised Wuchen fish, at his residence, intending to improve the taste. The two of them happened to meet each other. At that time, he also warmly invited them to have dinner together. They tasted the Hubei cuisine made by Wang Cheoqiang under the drive of curiosity, but they didn't feel very good. After only a few years of getting along, they gradually fell in love with the taste after many tastings, and now they are pestering Wang Cheoqiang to make some delicious food from his hometown. Wang Cheoqiang said, while checking the parts. Won't wait until the armored vehicle is approved by the military's Major Huffman. Bayek carefully inspected the parts with a wrench, and said with approval, "It's a good time." After inspecting the armored vehicle, the three of them sat beside them to rest, and Hulk couldn't help asking the two colleagues around him, "Is this car our masterpiece? This shouldn't be counted." The blueprint was provided by Major Huffman. We relied on the 5-ton heavy truck as a prototype and used it. At most, it is a modification. Wang Cheoqiang slumped on the ground and told Hulk beside him about his cognition. Bayek also added, "I agree with Wang's statement. We can count as a modification at most." Wang Cheoqiang continued to ask, "Hulk, do you want to design a car yourself?" Hulk retorted, "Don't you want to?" Hulk's words evoked their inner thoughts. All three wanted to design a car of their own and watch it take the world by storm. In fact, at present, only the Tusslade, who is in charge of them, is barely qualified. Now Volkswagen's hot-selling T-type cars and 1.5-ton Dongfeng trucks are all designed by Ford. The only thing that is designed by Volkswagen is that the current sales are not good. 5-ton heavy truck. All other models are variants, and the eyes of the three of them are full of desire when they think of Henry Ford, who is now a powerful man in the auto industry. The three armored vehicles are fine this time, right? While the three were thinking about their bright future, Major Hoffman, who was a little worried, came over. Now he has a lot of things to do. He has to build an armored vehicle unit from scratch, and he also cares about his weapons and equipment. Now he can't wait to be able to divide himself into several parts, but fortunately, he drew a few good cadets by virtue of his connections at the military academy, and then also brought in a few good officers from the cavalry unit and motor transport regiment he had served in, so that this experimental unit was slightly on track. No, after the troops are a little better, he will come to see the most important armored vehicles in the future. Major Hoffman, this is not a big problem, just change the welding to a small problem with lidding. This time, Hulk answered the Major's concern. That's fine. Hoffman looked at the armored car in front of him. His eyes were full of desire to realize his ideal, and he certainly didn't want to miss the opportunity to realize his dream now. The Crown Prince decided to put it in Constanta, considering that the newly built armored vehicle was best located close to his factory and the problems found in its maintenance and improvement. So he also came to the Volkswagen factory every 3 to 5 to check the progress. Hoffman asked what he cared about most. "So how soon can I test again?" It was still Hulk who answered. "It can be the day after tomorrow." Hearing their answers, Hoffman considered whether to let other officers in the army come over to take a look, but he finally gave up the idea for the sake of safety. It would be embarrassing for everyone if there was something wrong with the car when the test is over. Ask the Crown Prince to come and take a look. Inwardly Hoffman planned to wait until the test was over. Now Hoffman is looking for Crown Prince Edel, but he will not come because the Romanian ammonia plant has finally been completed and put into operation. Edel attaches great importance to this factory related to the army and agriculture and has now rushed to Ploiesti. Chapter 171, Synthetic Ammonia Plant. In fact, Edel rushed to Ploiesti early the next morning, after receiving the news that the ammonia plant was completed and started, and arrived at the ammonia plant at noon. In fact, the synthetic ammonia plant is right next to the oil refinery. It is only separated from the oil refinery by a wall, mainly to utilize the waste gas produced by the oil refining, which is also one of the raw materials for synthetic ammonia. There is also the associated natural gas produced by the exploitation of crude oil, which can also be used as a raw material for synthetic ammonia, which was considered when building a synthetic ammonia plant before point. After receiving the news that Edel rushed to the ammonia plant without stopping, a group of factory managers headed by the factory director Velisev rushed to the door to welcome the arrival of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Your Highness welcomes you. After seeing the arrival of the Crown Prince, the factory manager of Wolosev quickly led a group of factory personnel to greet His Royal Highness. Edel got out of the car and looked at the factory director of Wolosev in front of him. He knew the person in front of him. He studied abroad at Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, the best chemical university in Germany, and achieved good results. Later, he was appointed as the Deputy Director of Technology in the Fochtany chemical plant, a chemical plant built with German loans. During this period, Edel's efforts to improve the utilization rate of potassium salts in chemical plants were seen by Edel, so he was appointed as the director of the synthetic ammonia plant. Edel said to the factory director of Wolosev, "Let's go in and see. The world's first synthetic ammonia plant built in Germany in October last year can produce 30 tons of ammonia per day, while Romania, a plant twice as large as Germany, needs to import low carbon equipment that can withstand 200 atmospheres of pressure from Germany. Steel equipment, so it was queued behind. So it was dragged to the present point. Your Highness, this is our raw material compressor." The factory director of Wolosev pointed to the compressor in front of him and explained the workflow to Crown Prince Edel. This is taking a small amount of natural gas through the compressor to 4 MPa and then mixing in a small amount of syngas to heat it into the hydrogenation reactor. Edel listened to the explanation of the factory director of Wolosev with great interest. In fact, he had left this chemical knowledge behind, but it did not affect his knowledge that ammonia synthesis had a significant impact on the development of the entire chemical process. Impact. And now synthetic ammonia can also improve Romania's crop yield, which has a great effect on Romania. The director of Wolosev took the Crown Prince Edel all the way to explain a series of chemical terminology such as reformer, high temperature converter, carbon dioxide absorption tower, etc., which made Edel's head fascinated. However, in order to show his importance to the synthetic ammonia plant, he still made a serious expression and endured the bombardment of various professional chemical terms after finally arriving under the ammonia synthesis tower, the last site of the visit. Here the director of the Velisev finished the whole process, and Edel also saw the employees here transporting pressure-resistant steel cylinders filled with liquid ammonia one by one. Seeing the current scene, Edel is very satisfied, and it is worthwhile to work hard for it. How much ammonia can be produced per day now? Looking at the scene in front of him, Edel asked about the output that he was concerned about. His Royal Highness, because we have just started production, we can only produce 42 tons per day. But as long as you give me 4 months, I will make the factory reach the designed output. After the factory director of Wolosev said the current production capacity, he did not forget to make a guarantee to Edel. Director of Wolosev, you need to recruit more workers. After hearing the assurances from the factory director of Wolosev, Edel told him about his plan. We have more than one synthetic ammonia plant, and the current production capacity is completely unable to meet Romania's needs. So you need to train more ammonia workers for Romania. I predict that within 3 years, the scale of Romania's synthetic ammonia will need to double 10 times to basically meet Romania's needs. After hearing the words of the Crown Prince, the factory director of Wolosev was very excited. Although he will split the construction of the synthetic ammonia plant, but relying on Ploiesti's rich oil and natural gas resources, he can be sure that at least half of the new production capacity will fall on his own head. In this way, he can be called the godfather of chemical industry in Romania. This is an irresistible temptation for Wolosev, who has been specializing in chemical research. Please rest assured, Your Highness, I will make the current employees familiar with the work in their hands as soon as possible, and then recruit new workers. I will never leave the new factory without skilled workers and management. Point looking at Wilisev, who was emotionally in front of him. Edel decided to tell him about the chemical knowledge he still had some impressions of. Director of Velisev, you can't just do the ammonia synthesis process. You also need to explore more about the use of ammonia. I think there is still a possibility to improve the current ammonia fertilizer. Maybe the synthesis reaction of ammonia and other chemical raw materials can allow us to get better results. Too much fertilizer, like carbon dioxide, etc. After Edel said that he had little chemical knowledge, he refused the request of the factory director of Wilisev to have lunch at the factory. It's not that he can't eat at the factory anymore, because he wants to meet Mayor Doral, who is now Ploiesti. The mayor of Doral took over after Karachuyeri was transferred to Bucharest, but he has done a good job of growing Ploiesti from the 5th largest city when he took over, 187,648 people, to the 3rd largest now city, 275,611 people. The top 2 cities in Romania are Bucharest, 787,067 people, and Constanta, 578,101 people, from which we can see the population flow brought about by Romania's industrialization. Although Ploiesti has a good petrochemical industry and machinery manufacturing industry, these two industries strongly supported by the Romanian government, it cannot deny the performance of its ability. The most direct evidence is that the per capita annual income of Ploiesti is now the 698 lei. When he took over has grown to 884 lei now. It has increased by 26%, ranking among the top 4 in all counties and cities in Romania, and can be regarded as an official with quite good ability. Of course Edel likes this kind of capable officials. He can't wait to have such capable people under his command, and he can rest assured. In fact, the selection of Romanian officials is not bad now, which is still thanks to the memory of Edel's previous life. In that era, various civil service examinations and the systematic training of administrative schools sent too many talents to the country. Now Romania is gradually improving in this regard under the influence of Crown Prince Edel. Among them, Romania's latest government official assessment includes the assessment of the local gross national product and per capita income. Moreover, Romania also started the civil service examination last year to attract a large number of aspiring young people to join the government, just because these people are still at the bottom and can't see the effect. But with the passage of time, those old-fashioned officials will be replaced sooner or later. Moreover, Edel plans to set up an administrative academy next year so that these new government recruits can be trained more. To improve the government's executive power, allow the government to better coordinate Romania's resources so that the territories captured after World War I can be better integrated into Romania. His Royal Highness has arrived at the City Hall, and Mayor Doral is waiting at the door with the city officials. A report interrupted Edel's thoughts. Edel, who was sitting in the car, said to the guard who reminded him outside the car, "I know, I'll come out." I have seen your highness. Seeing the crown prince walking out of the car door, Mayor Doral brought key government officials to greet him. Looking at the officials in Ploiesti who were saluting towards him, Edel waved and told them, "Okay, let's go in." After speaking, Edel walked to Mayor Doral, who led him into the city hall. "Welcome, your highness, to visit Ploiesti." After leading Edel into city hall, Mayor Doral made a welcome remark. In fact, apart from staying in the capital Bucharest, Edel has gone to Constanta the most, and has rarely visited Ploiesti, the 3rd largest city, after being transferred from Karachuyeri. I'm very satisfied with the development of Ploiesti. In just 4 years, your population has increased by nearly 100,000, and the per capita income has also increased by a quarter. These are inseparable from the results of your efforts. I would like to express my gratitude to all of you, and hope that Ploiesti will develop even better in the days to come. As the words of Crown Prince Edel fell, all the officials present had excited expressions on their faces. They feel the goodwill from the Crown Prince, and believe that, as long as they do not make big mistakes, they will have good development in the future. After seeing the expressions of the officials in front of him, Edel continued, "Of course, we will not forget the meritorious officials at this time." Edel took out a Royal Knight medal from his pocket and told Mayor Doral, This knight medal is to recognize your contribution to it. Point in the face of the sudden royal knight medal, other government officials looked at Edel with admiration. Although they had not been promoted to a higher position, the officials present knew what the royal knight medal represented. This means that Edel has been recognized by the crown prince, which is a huge opportunity. Now who can not know that the crown prince is now in power alone, and the prime minister Brescian can at most get the power that the crown prince gives him to do things. This medal is too precious, and my current credit is not eligible for it at all. Point in the face of this knight medal that made all the officials present, Edel resisted the temptation to speak. It's not that he doesn't know how rare this opportunity is, but now he thinks that, if he gets it, it will stand out in the government, and will be detrimental to future development. Point in the face of Edel's resignation, of course Edel would not take it back. He continued. This is to let everyone know that the country will not forget everyone who paid for it, and must accept it. Thank you His Royal Highness for your love for me. I will develop Ploiesti even better in the future. After hearing the crown prince's words, Edel knew that he had to accept the knight medal, otherwise it would be an expression of dissatisfaction with the royal family. In fact, after he said his resignation at the beginning, he regretted it. After all, if he was misunderstood by the crown prince, then he would really be wronged. Edel put the medal on Edel's chest and patted him on the shoulder to encourage him. Work hard and make a greater contribution to Romania in the future, and you will be able to bridge the gap in the region. A young man in his 20s patted a middle-aged man in his 40s to encourage him, and none of the people present felt discordant. After awarding Edel with honors, Edel also met with the officials of the city hall one by one, and every official who was met by him was cautiously grateful to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. It can be seen from this that Edel's prestige in Romania is now mostly due to the fact that Romania has developed well economically and militarily under the leadership of the Crown Prince in the past few years, and in the Second Balkan War, it established its first position among the Balkan countries in one fell swoop. These achievements are inseparable from the key figure, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Chapter 172 Tracked Armored Vehicle. After Edel commended and affirmed the government officials in Ploiesti, he then inspected other factories in Ploiesti. Among them, during the inspection of the machinery factory, they affirmed the contribution of their diesel engines and tractors to Romania. He also praised the factory director of the machinery factory, Ploiesti, saying that he is very capable and suitable. The son-in-law of the factory director and the director of the establishment workshop was also honored to participate in the team to welcome the Crown Prince. However, as a small workshop director, of course he couldn't talk to the Crown Prince. He could only stand at the back of the team and look at the Crown Prince, who was not too different in age than himself. Then Edel went to refineries and oil extraction sites to learn about the current situation of Romanian oil extraction and refining. In order to encourage the private economy, he also inspected several private supporting factories. After inspecting Wang's enterprises, Edel went deep into the people to understand the current income situation of residents, and also checked the situation of local farmers, so as to strengthen his image of being close to the people. This visit to Ploiesti took 6 days, and it was not until Edel received a telegram from Hoffman that the armored vehicle had been developed that he left Ploiesti by car, intending to go to Constanța. Look at the seeds of these armored units sitting on the train to Constanța. Edel could hardly remember how many times he had been to Romania's largest port city. Usually he will go to Constanța in a few months, and Ploiesti is completely impossible to compare with. After Edel came to Constanța by train, he came to the Volkswagen test field non-stop, looking at a 4-dimensional armored car full of rivets and punk atmosphere. He couldn't help asking, "This is the armored vehicle you developed?" The 3 people in charge of research and development were a little puzzled by the Crown Prince's question, but Helk, who was led by the 3, stepped forward to answer Edel's question. "Yes, Your Highness." Seeing the questioning eyes of the Crown Prince, Hulk told him truthfully what he knew. "We built this armored vehicle reasonably according to the requirements of the drawings. Except for the replacement of welding with rivets, there is no big difference from the drawings. However, there are good reasons for us to replace welding with rivets. Now welding is not suitable for military industry product." After hearing Helk's answer, Edel couldn't help but look at Major Hoffman. Facing the questioning eyes of the Crown Prince, Major Hoffman explained nervously. The drawings you gave me, Your Highness. I chose such a design after considering all factors. What consideration? After hearing Major Hoffman's explanation, Edel also wanted to hear his explanation. Seeing that the Crown Prince was not angry because of his unauthorized modification, Hoffman spoke out about his considerations. His Royal Highness, among the drawings you gave me, 2 of the models are too expensive to process and are completely unsuitable for current use. After he finished speaking, he took out the SDKFZ-221 and SDKFZ-230 four-wheeled armored vehicles sketched by Edel. The use of welding on the shape of these 2 armored vehicles is not a big problem, but now replacing them with rivets will increase the cost. The other 2 vehicles. This armored vehicle is smaller and doesn't fit the 5-ton heavy-duty truck chassis we use now. Major Hoffman took out the sketch of the Japanese Type 92 armored vehicle drawn by Edel and told the Crown Prince. Edel nodded to signal him to continue. Hoffman took out the drawings of the M8 armored vehicle given by the Crown Prince and continued to talk about it. In the end, this drawing is the most suitable for the current chassis, but I think its circular turret is cast in one piece, which will increase our cost, so I chose to enlarge the turret from this drawing and add the car body of this drawing. Looking at the drawings of the M8 armored vehicle and the Type 92 armored vehicle held by Major Hoffman, Ed realized that the armored vehicle in front of him was really a combination of these 2 drawings. After listening to Major Hoffman's explanation, Edel felt that his previous considerations were a little too advanced. Thinking that these drawings were all models that were widely used in World War II, Ed felt that he was too impatient. Even if he could build it, the estimated price would be too high, which would be a burden on the current Romanian army. Edel figured this out and said it sincerely to Major Hoffman. It's true that my expectations are too high. Your revision is very reasonable. Just do as you say. Then he learned about the specific data of this armored vehicle and heard that this armored vehicle could not be afraid of the shooting of various firearms, whether it was the Maxim or large caliber machine guns that are currently equipped in various countries. There was no way to use this armored vehicle. However, it is not to say that there is no weakness. This armored vehicle is very afraid of artillery attacks. No matter what kind of artillery, even if it does not hit directly, as long as the landing point is nearby, it is easy to fall into the crater and cannot move. These shortcomings have been reflected in previous tests, so this armored vehicle is completely unsuitable for attacking enemies with positions. When chasing the enemy, it is easy to be blocked by the damaged road. Only when defending, relying on the advantage of having a good road, can this armored vehicle exert its greatest advantage. After listening to the explanation of the armored vehicle, Edel knew that this was the result of the poor adaptability of the wheeled armored vehicle to the road. He questioned Major Hoffman. In the face of this situation, do you have any solution? His Royal Highness, I think at present, this armored vehicle can only be used in small-scale battles, or urban defense warfare is the best use for it. Facing Major Hoffman's words, Edel felt that he needed to give him direction. Have you considered the possibility of replacing the wheels with tracks to improve its terrain adaptation, in the face of the Crown Prince's suggestion? Major Hoffman had also thought about it before. The use of tracks can indeed increase the adaptability of the vehicle, but he has seen the travel of tracked vehicles, and the speed is too slow to meet his requirements for upper dash. Major Hoffman spoke out about his considerations. His Royal Highness, I have considered it before, but the speed of the track is too slow. It can only run 20 km per hour on the road, and if it can reach 15 km in the wild, it is fast. And the tracked vehicle parts are relatively fast. Many are prone to failure, and maintenance is a big problem. After hearing Major Hoffman's words, Edel felt the need to reverse his mind. Major Hoffman, these problems are actually very easy to solve. If the speed of the tracked armored vehicle is too slow, this is not a problem at all. He is at least faster than the infantry, and it can adapt to complex terrain, which provides its large-scale application. At least it can provide mobile firepower for the soldiers on the front line, and its sturdy armor can also provide cover for them. As for the case where too many parts of the tracked armored vehicle are prone to failure, more maintenance personnel can be arranged to maintain it. After hearing the explanation of the Crown Prince, Major Hoffman was a little moved. Now wheeled armored vehicles are affected by various restrictions that affect their performance. If most of these restrictions are changed from wheeled to tracks, it will become possible to provide conditions for large-scale use. Thinking of these, Major Hoffman said with a heartbeat, I will mainly study the possibility of replacing wheeled armored vehicles with tracks. Hearing that Major Hoffman had been changed by himself, Edel was afraid that he would be waiting for the tracked armored vehicle to talk about it. However, this armored vehicle is not bad. You can purchase some first. Familiarize yourself with the method of use, and you can also train its use tactics and other situations. We will first familiarize ourselves with the use of this armored vehicle and provide experience for the Army's large-scale equipment. After talking with Major Hoffman, Edel also thanked the 3 technicians in charge of research and development for their hard work. Among them, Wan Cheokiang's typical Oriental face has long caught his attention, so in the conversation with the 3R/U0026D personnel, he specifically asked their home addresses. When he got Wan Cheokiang and his previous life the same motherland, he also cared about it intentionally. Chapter 173 Armored Test Battalion. After observing the new armored vehicle, Edel, accompanied by Major Hoffman, inspected the seed armored experimental battalion of the armored unit that was still being formed. The unit's camp was 8 kilometers outside Constanta, a wilderness called Poke, and less than 10 kilometers from the Volkswagen factory. It used to be the station of a cavalry regiment and was later transferred, but the camp still remains. Major Hoffman took a fancy to this place when choosing a station. The cavalry regiment is of course a large station. The few people nearby are conducive to testing various tactics, and it is not far from the city to facilitate life, so he chose the armored experimental battalion here. The staff are well prepared. Edel looked at the more than 300 officers and soldiers of the armored experimental battalion neatly lined up in front of him, and talked to Hoffman when he was inspected by himself. His Royal Highness, they are all elite soldiers transferred from the Motor Transport Regiment and the cavalry unit. Major Hoffman praised his soldiers. In fact, the situation is not as good as he said. After Major Hoffman took the Crown Prince and gave the order to set up an armored experimental battalion, Major Hoffman happily went to the cavalry unit and the car transport regiment, where he had stayed before. Personnel, in the face of Hoffman's poaching of the 2 chief officers, although they would not disobey the order of the Crown Prince, they also gave Major Hoffman a lot of hardships in private. Especially in the cavalry unit, its chief officer, Lieutenant Colonel Stockley, told his soldiers in private that the unit formed by Hoffman would only stay in the city because his armored vehicles could only be used in the case of good roads fight. This caused many of the soldiers and officers whom Major Hoffman favored to decline his invitation. Hoffman didn't understand this situation at first, but it was only after seeing that a large number of officers and soldiers invited by him refused his invitation. Major Hoffman, after learning that the mastermind behind his lack of recruitment was Lieutenant Colonel Stockley, he specifically found Lieutenant Colonel Stockley to discuss this matter. After friendly consultation between the two, Lieutenant Colonel Stockley no longer prevented Hoffman from recruiting people in the cavalry unit, and Hoffman could not specifically find the backbone of the cavalry unit, but could only choose among ordinary soldiers and officers. The situation of recruiting people in the motor transport regiment was much better. As a result, it belonged to the logistics force, and was not as good as the combat force in the First World War, and the lessons Major Hoffman learned from Lieutenant Colonel Stockley made him learn smart. When he came to the motor transport regiment to select people, he no longer only focused on the best soldiers and officers of the other party, which also saved him a lot of trouble. However, after Major Hoffman finished picking people, the commander of the transport regiment was also in pain for a while, because he took away the maintenance personnel of a company. Coupled with the fact that Hoffman is still in the military academy, he has recruited several good cadets from the school. I hope you can complete the training as soon as possible. Eda, after inspecting the soldiers and officers of the armored battalion, continue to check on soldiers' living conditions and talk to them. Soldier, what's your name? Edel asked with concern to a soldier in front of him. His Royal Highness, my name is Sanders, from Hobart Village. The soldier named Sanders, who was asked by the Crown Prince, answered excitedly. His words caused the shoulders of the surrounding soldiers to rise and fall, and it seemed that they endured very hard. Sanders, are you used to living here? Edel did not change. his attitude because of the soldier's funny answer, and still asked with a smile. The court etiquette that Edel has learned over the years will prevent him from changing his complexion because of the changes, unless the soldier named Sanders suddenly sings the East is red. In fact, the soldier regretted it after he finished speaking and could not wait to find a hole to burrow into. However, after the Crown Prince continued to ask questions to help him resolve this embarrassment, he was much better. At least he knew how to answer. His Royal Highness, I'm very accustomed to living in the army, among which my squad leader Dosk helped me the most. Edel was very happy to see one of the non-commissioned officers smiling, probably the Dosk squad leader, he said. He continued to chat a few words with the soldier and continued to patrol the entire camp. It looks like you haven't finished remodeling this camp yet. After the tour, Edel told Major Hoffman, who had been with him, about his situation after the tour. When patrolling the barracks, Edel saw the shadows of too many cavalry camps. A large number of stables had not been dismantled. In the corners, he could still see broken horseshoes, and in the corners of the barracks, he also saw stacks of hay. Hoffman explained after hearing the Crown Prince's questioning. Yes, Your Highness, there are still many traces of cavalry in our barracks. The main reason is that the time is too short, and the soldiers in front of us did not resist 5 days ago at the latest. Now the main purpose is to train them into an army. After getting to know each other, we will arrange for people to transform the general battalion as soon as possible. After hearing Major Hoffman's explanation, Edel didn't answer whether it was good or bad, but continued to care about how Hoffman trained the unit. There is no situation where European armies have centralized armored vehicles. So what do you think about this new force? Hoffman knew that the Crown Prince was telling the truth, and now the armored vehicles in other armies in Europe are scattered. Generally, they are allotted for use by the army, but there are only a dozen or so, because now countries do not know how to use this expensive and not easy to use thing. Like Russia, which worked hardest to develop armored vehicles before. In 1905, Nakazais designed Russia's first armored vehicle, named Nakazais Armored Vehicle, and Russia subsequently purchased 10 such armored vehicles, which were placed in St. Petersburg is used as a guardian force. Although the United Kingdom, which was the first to develop armored vehicles, used armored vehicles in the Boer War, now the United Kingdom is doing the same as Russia, and they all purchase a small amount of them and put them in the Ministry of War as expensive novelties. His Royal Highness, I'm going to purchase 24 armored vehicles from Volkswagen and train them into 2 companies, currently one with 84 men and one with 81 men, plus a maintenance company, currently 74 men, and a logistics company, currently with 81 men, 87, which is the preparation I'm currently preparing. Hoffman said the plan that he thought about for a long time. Edel heard that he was going to train 4 companies and asked after thinking for a while, then how many people are there after you're ready to train? I calculated that according to the preparation of the Armored Experimental Battalion, a total of 497 people are needed. Edel heard Major Hoffman's answer and spoke to him. Let go and do it. Afterwards, Edel took a train back to the capital, Bucharest, after inspecting the military camp, where the Chief of the General Staff, Admiral Pretian, had already prepared a plan to train 2 more divisions, waiting for the approval of the Crown Prince. Chapter 174 The New Army. After Edel returned from Constanta, Chief of General Staff Prezhan came to the Crown Prince's office anxiously. Your Highness, this is the training plan we prepared. After entering the office and greeting the Crown Prince, the Chief of the General Staff of Prezhan put the formation plan he had prepared for a long time in front of Edel. Edel picked up the formation plan prepared by Admiral Pretian and his staff and read it. In this formation plan, the opinion of the General Staff is to draw a small number of backbones from each division to form these 2 new divisions. Among them, the numbers of the 15th and 18th Divisions of the Romanian Army were respectively given. The staff of the 15th Division commander gave the Deputy Commander of the 3rd Division, Major General Kledov, and the Deputy Commander of the 5th Division, Major General Andakis, Major General Stariko, Deputy Commander of the 8th Division, The candidates for the commander of the 18th Division were Major General Modelk, the Deputy Commander of the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard, Major General Peter Pan, the Deputy Commander of the 2nd Division, and Major General Dotrud, the Deputy Commander of the 8th Division. Edel looked at the candidates given by the General Staff. They were all capable and qualified generals in the army, generally in their 40s. Except for Major General Modelk, the Deputy Commander of the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard. He was only 50 years old when he was a little older. Edel had a hard time choosing, and couldn't help raising his head to ask Admiral Pilishin, who was standing in front of him, "What's the opinion of your general staff?" In the face of the Crown Prince's question, Admiral Pilishin knew that he should not answer this question by himself, otherwise he would not be far from being dismissed. He said defiantly, "Every one of them is qualified for this position due to the arrangement of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." Hearing the words of Admiral Pilishin's shirk, Edel couldn't force him. In fact, there are quite a few candidates in the army who are competent for these two new divisions. When the staff was making preparations, the army got news. After all, the division commander and the deputy division commander are only a little bit closer, but the division commander is half a foot into the military higher level. Rumors that Lieutenant General Ferret of the 12th Division will take over as Director of Education has been confirmed, and he will take over the post of retiring Director of Education in a month's time. In the face of Lieutenant General Ferret, who is about to become one of the three giants of the Romanian army, the Minister of the Army, the Chief of the General Staff, and the Director of Education, no one can say that he is not envious. Even if he is the weakest giant among them, he is much better than being a teacher in the face of such a situation. The two newly formed divisions were quickly targeted by those who were interested. After all, the path of Lieutenant General Ferret could also be copied. So soon some people came to the staff to sell themselves, but they were all blocked by Admiral Pili Mountain. If others are just envious of Lieutenant General Fleet's opportunity, he is more of a worry. Admiral Pleasant knew that the Crown Prince would not let himself dominate the army. In his opinion, the Crown Prince will divide his powers after ascending to the Romanian throne, for which he will hand over some powers at that time, and he does not intend to infect the Ministry of War. However, in the face of the Crown Prince's decentralization of powers now, how could he dare to meet those candidates for teachers? There was no news here in Ploiesti. Edel could only choose the two division commanders, based on what he knew. Among the candidates for the commander of the 15th Division, he chose Major General Kledov, the deputy commander of the 3rd Division. Major General Kledov was born in a noble family in Iasi. He studied military courses in the military academy since he was a child, and later served as company commander, battalion commander, regiment commander and other positions. But this is not the main reason why Edel chose him. The main reason is that he has always shown his loyalty to the royal family. Plus he was the man of General Courtois, Minister of the Army, so Edel chose him. After the war against Bulgaria, Edel found that he couldn't ignore the military forces representing his father's line too much, otherwise it is very likely that the Chief of Staff, the Prezhan family, would dominate in the future. This is intolerable to every high-ranking person, so he supported Lieutenant General Ferret, who performed well in the war. It's just that Lieutenant General Ferret has not grown up yet, and Edel has taken a fancy to the military forces of his father Karolai anyway. He must take over himself in the future, and the people represented by Admiral Courtois did not make people feel uneasy. The commander of the 15th Division is Major General Kledov. After thinking for a while, Edel raised his head and said his choice to Prezhan. Okay, Your Highness. After hearing the answer given by the Crown Prince, Prezhan wrote down the name of Major General Kledov, believing that he will receive the good news soon. After deciding on the candidates for the commander of the 15th Division, Edel continued to study the candidates for the 18th Division. But this time there are more choices. After giving the power of his father's line, the rest is his own candidate. Although Major General Modelk is 50 years old, the Crown Prince thinks that he can still do a good job in the 18th Division. Teacher. The 18th Division will be taken over by Major General Modelk. Edel didn't think for a long time, and then named the candidates for the 18th Division. Follow Your Highness. After deciding on the candidates for the two division commanders, Edel continued to decide on the candidates for the deputy commanders and chief of staff of the two divisions. Colonel Bodov of the 4 Military Affairs Offices of the General Staff. The candidate for the deputy commander of the 18th Division was Colonel Lesver, the former brigade commander of the 2nd Brigade of the 4th Division, and the chief of staff was taken over by Lieutenant Colonel Anderson, the former chief of staff of the 2nd Brigade of the 3rd Division. As for the brigade level officers of the 2 newly formed divisions, they were appointed by the staff after deciding on the candidates for the 2 divisions. Edel asked with concern, "How are the preparations for the equipment staff?" After hearing the Crown Prince's inquiry, Admiral Pilishin said the information controlled by the staff. His Royal Highness, in terms of personnel, we have made the 2 divisions full by enlisting new recruits and delaying the retirement of some personnel. As for the equipment, it has been transferred from the material storage warehouse, but there are still 7 gaps in our 105 howitzers, and I have given them to the arsenal. Issue orders so they can meet the needs of the military as quickly as possible. After the Chief of Staff of Preshan finished talking about the newly formed 2 divisions, Edel asked, "Chief of the General Staff, I plan to expand the 105 howitzer battalion to 18 for each division. What do you think?" Edel had previously considered the idea of expanding the 105 howitzer, but it was not realized due to lack of money. Now that World War I is approaching, and the Romanian government is still short of money, Edel feels he can't wait any longer. As for the starting production capacity of the arsenal, this is not a problem at all. The annual production capacity of 105 howitzers has never been running at full speed, and Edel intends to run it at full speed. After hearing the Crown Prince's words, Preshan was of course willing, but considering Romania's current finances, he asked a little hesitantly, "His Royal Highness, if it is expanded like this, the current military spending will not be enough." Hearing that Pulishin wanted to increase military spending, Edel looked at his chief of staff a little rogue, feeling that he was too incompetent not to go into business. "I will ask the government to allocate 35 million lei for the procurement fee, but it must be equipped as soon as possible. The recent situation in Europe is a bit suffocating." After hearing the Crown Prince's words, Pulishin could only answer, "Okay, Your Highness, I will let the factory speed up production on the date marked on the order soon." The news that each division would expand 6 105 howitzers spread in the army, and the divisions were cheering, except that there were more machine guns than the German army, and now the Romanian army equipment is completely a copy of the German army. And Edel now needs to prepare to speed up Romania's material reserves. Just at this moment a news made him put down the work in his hand. PS Mantou was delayed before. I hope you don't blame it. Chapter 175 Pregnancy. It has snowed heavily in Romania in November, and people are wearing thick winter clothes. In the capital Bucharest's royal palace, Crown Prince Edel is sitting in a warm office discussing the progress of material reserves with Prime Minister Bricianu. Prime Minister Bricianu, now Romania's various reserves of materials should be accelerated. Edel looked at the progress of the stockpiles in his hands and expressed his dissatisfaction with Prime Minister Bricianu. His Royal Highness, the temperature outside in winter has dropped to -10 degrees, which has caused a lot of decrease in the efficiency of workers. Coupled with the huge increase in imports this year, dock stevedores have not been on vacation for 2 months. So now their efficiency has declined. Too many, and now the throughput efficiency of the terminal can only be achieved in the face of the Crown Prince's dissatisfaction. Prime Minister Bricianu can only speak of the current difficulties after hearing Prime Minister Bricianu's words. Edel said it without thinking. Then increase the number of dock workers and improve their pay. His Royal Highness, the government has made such a proposal to the port company before, but most of the terminal loading and unloading business is now done by private individuals. Our government cannot force them to increase their manpower. Prime Minister Bricianu spoke about the situation that the government is facing now. That's right. Port loading and unloading in various countries are now handed over to private companies to operate. They purchase part of the port's wharf and recruit manpower to carry out the loading and unloading business. Take Romania's largest and most advanced port of Constanta as an example. There are 18 private companies, large and small, providing loading and unloading services at the port. They divide up the civilian port of Constanta and compete with each other. Today you reduce the loading and unloading costs Tomorrow I will increase the loading and unloading speed, and sometimes they will use some unsightly means to attack the opponent, but in general, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. It's just that these private companies also have the financial resources to purchase large-scale port machinery and equipment in the face of the sudden busy port scene. Labor alone cannot meet the current surge in imports and exports. Moreover, recruiting more loading and unloading workers also requires greater expenditure. Obviously, these private loading and unloading companies are recruiting more workers to make profits, but the loading and unloading equipment has not increased. Relying on more manpower will reduce efficiency and they are unwilling to do so. Reason point. After hearing the reason stated by the Prime Minister, Edel knew that the government was really not good at intervening in this regard. However, this is not a problem for the Crown Prince. Under his subordinates, Milik and Karist are both suitable to do such a thing. Obviously, Prime Minister Bricianu also has such an idea. Prime Minister, tell me about this. You need to speed up the number of purchases. Edel had not considered the throughput of the port before. He vaguely remembered that in his previous life, Nigeria had also experienced insufficient port throughput, and it took a year for the bulk purchased materials to be loaded on the transport ship before they were completely unloaded. At that time, after Nigeria's independence, Nigeria had an ambitious plan to develop domestically. They purchased a large amount of machinery and materials from all over the world, and soon a large amount of materials were transported to the Nigerian ports at that time. At this time, the government found that its port throughput was completely insufficient, so a large number of machinery and supplies can only float at sea, waiting to be unloaded at the port. It was a well-known counterexample at the time, and I didn't expect Edel to make this mistake himself. While Edel and Prime Minister Bricianu were discussing the problems in the port, there was a knock on the door. Come in. Edel stopped discussing with the Prime Minister and waited for the guard's report. Sure enough, a guard walked into the office with a smile on his face. He walked over to Edel and said a word quietly. Really? After hearing the news, Edel asked again a little uncertainly. Yes, Your Highness. Dr. Odsk has been confirmed. The guards told the exact news. Edel knew that Dr. Odsk, as a family doctor of the royal family, did not dare to say such words under uncertain circumstances. Then what the guard said was true. Prime Minister Bricianu saw that the guards and the Crown Prince were playing a riddle, and he had some guesses in his heart, but he still asked with the same expression. Your Highness, can you please tell me? Edel said with a smile. It's okay, Prime Minister. Sophie Mary is pregnant and Dr. Odsk has confirmed that she has more than a month. After hearing the happy words of Crown Prince Edel, Prime Minister Bricianu also said happily, His Royal Highness, congratulations on your becoming a father. Thank you, Your Excellency, Prime Minister. That's it for today. I don't have the mood to continue dealing with things now. Prime Minister Bricianu also said with a smile. Understandable. You must know that when I heard the news of my wife's pregnancy for the first time, I was even worse than His Highness. After the Prime Minister finished his congratulatory words, it was suggested, go and see Her Royal Highness. I need my husband by her side at this time. After hearing the Prime Minister's suggestion, Edel stood up and followed the guards to his room in a hurry. He was now eager to see his wife. Prime Minister Bricianu looked at the departing Crown Prince and was not ready to stay any longer. He will also share the news that the Crown Princess is pregnant. Even in the era when the kingship of later generations has declined, news about the royal family is still the focus of people's pursuit. Not to mention that in Romania, a country where the kingship is still very strong, the news of the pregnancy of the Crown Prince and concubine is believed to be more anticipated. Not to mention these days when members of the Hohenzollern Sigmaringen family are few and far between. Edel quickly came to his room. His parents, King Carol and Queen Elizabeth, had come here long ago, talking with his wife Sophie Mary lying on the bed. At this time, seeing Edel who hurried back, her mother, Queen Elizabeth, turned her head and talked about him. Edel, you should pay more attention to your wife. I don't want to have tea with Sophie Mary today, and I asked Dr. Odsk to check her pregnancy when she was suddenly nauseous. Otherwise we wouldn't even know about it over a month. In the face of his mother's education, Edel smirked and accepted his mother's reprimand and looked at his wife with concern. Seeing Queen Elizabeth scolding her husband for not caring enough about her, Sophie Mary told Edel to relieve the siege. Don't talk about Edel, mom. He is also for this country. He is usually busy with work. I understand him very well. Hearing Sophie Mera's words to relieve her husband, Elizabeth was just pretending, but Edel could really reprimand her son. She turned her head and said to her daughter-in-law Sophie Mary, "Okay, I won't talk about him. It's all about the couple, but now that you're pregnant, you need to rest more." Good mother Elizabeth saw the loving couple and told them about it. "Then you can talk more, and your father and I will go back." Seeing this, Edel planned to send her parents, but was stopped by Queen Elizabeth, who had expected it. "You spend more time with your wife, and your father and I don't need to send it." After speaking, he and Caroline walked out of the room. After watching his parents walk out the door, Edel turned around and walked to Sophie Mera's side, leaned down and touched Sophie Mera's hand and said affectionately, "Thank you so much, Sophie." In the face of her husband's concern, Sophie Mary also said happily, "It's okay. It's my wife's duty." Soon the news of the crown princess's pregnancy spread, and there were cheers in Romania, and Austria-Hungary soon sent people to come to care for Princess Sophie Mary. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.